Merrimack TV is committed to our community. From gavel-to-gavel coverage of town and school board meetings, to updates on town services and projects, we aim to keep you connected.
Good morning, I'm Kyle Fox, Public Works Director for the town of Merrimack.
Hi, I'm Diane Trippett. I'm the town clerk tax collector for the town of Merrimack.
I'm Captain Matt Tarleton with the Merrimack, New Hampshire Police Department.
And keep the public informed of every motion.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye.
And many moments, so you can be confident that we're here for you. Thanks for watching. Stay connected. Follow Merrimack TV on Facebook.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's 7 p.m., so I will call to order the meeting of the Merrimack Planning Board for April 20th, 2021. I know that I have on my mind in a few seconds, I'll want to exercise a bit of personal privilege to comment on a couple of things, and I know others may as well. But before we do that, let me cover the housekeeping items that we're obligated to do with a remote meeting and read through the required script. As chair of the Merrimack Planning Board, due to the COVID-19 crisis and in accordance with the Governor Sununu's Emergency Order Number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-4, this board's authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to the meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the Governor's Emergency Order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, this is to confirm that we are providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. We're utilizing the Zoom platform for this electronic meeting. All members of the board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during the meeting through the Zoom platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting through dialing either of the following phone numbers: 1-312-626-6799 or 1-929-205-6099, and entering the meeting ID, which is 988-1839-6649. The meeting may also be viewed on Merrimack TV Channel 20 on Comcast Cable or Merrimack TV's webpage at http://merrimacktv.com. merrimacktv.com. When the public comment is opened by the chair, press star 9 on your phone to raise your hand in order to be recognized. Once called upon, press star 6 to unmute your line and present your testimony. We're providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of how to access the meeting using Zoom, and instructions are provided on the meeting agenda posted on the Town of Merrimack's website at www.merrimacknh.gov/planning-board. We are providing a mechanism for the public to alert this public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem, please email rprice@merrimacknh.gov. We are adjourning the meeting if the public is unable to access the meeting. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting, we will adjourn the meeting and have it rescheduled at that time. Please note that all votes that are taken during the meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance, where each member states their presence. Also, please state whether there's anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the Right to Know law. Let's begin with Nelson Disco.
Yes, I'm Nelson Disco. I'm at my home on 10 Underwood Lane in Merrimack, and I'm all by myself.
Counselor Bill Boyd.
Good evening. This is Merrimack Town Council Bill Boyd of 139 Joppa Road. I'm upstairs in my office by myself. However, my wife and my daughter are home. They're in different parts of the house. They may periodically pop in to check in. Other than that, I have reviewed the materials tonight and prepared to participate, and I can hear the proceedings as they are being presented currently. Thank you.
Excellent. Paul McLaughlin.
Paul McLaughlin. I am at my residence on 31 Peter Road in Merrimack. I'm currently alone in the room, but my wife and daughter may come in and out as the meeting proceeds.
All right. My name is Bob Best. I'm the chairman of the planning board. I'm at my home, and there's nobody in the room presently, but lots of people, wife and kids, and cats and dogs in the house that may pop in and out of the screen. With that in mind, let's return to what I mentioned before, which is a moment of personal privilege. It is with obvious heavy heart that we must sit here and convene a planning board meeting for the first time in many years without our friend Alistair with us. For those who haven't heard the news, Alistair passed away on Friday after a long battle with his prostate cancer. And I wanted to take the opportunity to say a few things that I recall most about him, and offer everybody else the opportunity to do so as well if they choose to. And when we're done with that, I think we can also pause for a bit of moment of silence. And with that, I can't say enough about what a great guy Alistair has been for the town, for his service, for everything from driving school buses to volunteering on these boards. He did it all out of a sense of duty and service with no expectation of anything in return. Just a fabulous community servant, but more than that, a very close friend. I can't tell you how many times we sat around the common man having a beer and talking about everything from his life working in Africa and in the military, and just telling story after story of all the life experiences. And that's a memory that I will hold dear to my heart. And it just feels like another one of those things that COVID kind of robbed from us over the last year, was the chance to do that. And someday we'll have to gather up again at the Common Man and raise a glass around Alistair's chair and just remember him for it. Does anyone else want to make a comment or two in his memory? Councillor Boyd.
Thanks, Bob. I appreciate it. And I'm not going to speak for everybody else, but I think it's fair to say that all of our hearts are heavy tonight. Our prayers are with Kathy and his family. Bob, it's funny that you would talk about Alistair and his sense of duty to the community. It's kind of funny. I was thinking of when you said that, I immediately thought about HMS Pinafore by Sullivan and Gilbert and the song "He Is an Englishman," which and I don't know if people are familiar with the musical, but it's all about duty. And that song, obviously, that specific musical certainly personifies Alistair as who he was as a human. I learned so much about Alistair, what he did in his life, from working in Africa to at the Festiniog Railroad in the UK, which is kind of an eclectic narrow gauge railroad line that runs through parts of Wales and parts of England. I think we're always going to remember the word roundabout. We're always going to remember that, I think, till the day that we pass on. Alistair's use of that in lieu of a stop sign or a traffic light. There's so many stories that I think I can allude to about Alistair that don't begin to encapsulate who he was, who he was as a human. But what I would say, like he was to all of us, he was a friend. He most certainly was a mentor to all of us. But he was also a very good human being to everybody that crossed his path. And I mean that sincerely. The work he did here on the planning board, we're not going to forget. And we certainly appreciate all of his service that he's given to the town of Merrimack. So with a heavy heart, I'm going to miss him. I'm going to miss having a pint with him. But he's in a better place right now, considering what he has been through, what he had been through health-wise over the past couple of years. So my prayers to Kathy and his family. Godspeed, Alistair. This individual is going to miss you horribly. And I thank you for your service to the town of Merrimack. Bob, thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Nelson, I think you had a hand up. We'll make some comments.
Yeah, I did. But you guys have taken some of the wind from my sails. But I want to second everything you said about Alistair. He was a true citizen of the community. He did all he could for this community and helped it out. Coming from another country, he became an American citizen. He became involved in the community right up to his earlobes in work of one kind or another. Like you said, driving the school buses, helping out this committee, giving us his ideas and principles and ideas that many of which are now incorporated into our procedures. And I will miss him certainly, and my best goes to Kathy and her family and all of Alistair's family, wherever they are, here or there, and I can't say any more that without getting repetitious or teary. So thanks for the opportunity, and thanks, Alistair, for your service.
Absolutely. Does anyone else want to offer any comments? Paul?
Yeah, just to, I hate to let it go by, but one of the things I enjoyed about it most, especially when we were actually able to go get drinks after meetings, was as a true Englishman, his incredibly dry sense of humor. If you got it, then he was a real funny guy. And the incredible amount of time that he donated to the community, he was a great man, and it will be missed.
Yeah. He was. I can't tell you how many times at some planning board meeting he was speaking energetically about some aspect of a plan that he wanted to talk about, and he had, a nice argument, kind of all organized. And then, when he's finished and he encounters a little bit of counter evidence, he was quick to retreat and say, "Well, that's it. I'll shut up then. Don't forget everything I said. I'll shut up." How many times has he done that where he just does charge, and then, oh, never mind, shut up. We're definitely going to miss the guy. Thank you all for saying some nice words, and we'll have to continue doing our work as a planning board and move ahead, but he will certainly be missed. He added a lot to the puzzle. With that, we're up to, let's see, announcements. Our next planning board meeting after tonight is May 4th, 2021 at 7 p.m. It's listed on my agenda as being done remotely via Zoom, although we may have a discussion later in our meeting to talk about the possibility of in-person meetings. And we'll take that up a little bit later. But Nelson, let's appoint you into a full voting position. Nelson, I usually pick whose seat you're like to be in for a voting position, but I'm not sure whether it's an honor or stepping on toes to appoint you into Alistair's position. Would you like to be appointed to Alistair's position tonight?
It would be an honor.
Very good. So we'll appoint you to fill in for Alistair tonight, to a full voting member. That brings us to our Planning and Zoning Administrator's report. Robert, what have you?
The only item I have tonight, Mr. Chair, is that staff recommends that the Susie Rosenfeld lot line adjustment application is not of regional impact.
What's the will of the board with respect to the recommendation that the application before us tonight is not a regional impact?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second? Second by Nelson Disco. Let's do a roll call vote. Paul McLaughlin.
Vote aye.
Bill Boyd.
Boyd votes aye.
Nelson Disco.
Aye.
Robert Best votes aye as well. 4-0-0 to uphold the staff's recommendation. Robert, is there anything else in your Planning and Zoning Administrator's report?
I have nothing else tonight, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any questions by members of the board? Okay. The next item on our agenda is RCL Realty LLC as the applicant and owner. Continued review for consideration of final approval of an amendment to a previously approved subdivision. The parcels are located on Elizabeth Drive, Squires Drive, and Charles Road in the R1 and R2 residential districts. Tax map 3A, lot 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 25, 26, and 27. It's case planning board 2021-7. This item has been continued from the February 16th and March 16th, 2021 planning board meetings. Robert, is there anything that we need to know before we hear from the applicant?
By way of summary, the board did accept this application on March 16th. So the 65-day review clock is set to expire May 20th. There are still several waivers that the applicants requested that have yet to be dealt with. Those are listed in my memo. So those will have to be taken up tonight. Other than that, peer review comments also have been received, and the applicant has submitted a revised plan that you do have in your packets. That was an effort to address those as well as other comments that were made the last time this application was before the board for review. And beyond that, I would be willing to turn it over to the applicant when you're ready.
Thank you, Robert. Before I call the applicant, I had one other housekeeping item to mention to anybody that's on the call while looking at the agenda. The item 4 on our agenda, the John Flatley Company has requested a continuance, which I expect would be granted. So if you're on the call anticipating participating in that, you need not stay if you don't want to. With that in mind, is the applicant for RCL Realty present?
Yes.
Please introduce yourself for the record and tell us where we're at with the proposal.
Yep. Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Matt Peterson with Keach Nordstrom Associates here representing RCL Realty for the proposed subdivision as you outlined on Charles Road in Elizabeth. So, Mr. Chairman, just one housekeeping. Funny, this is my first planning board meeting from home, and now you're going to be talking of going in person at the next one. My wife is not going to believe me that I finally got this right. All right. So, I think most of you, again, this was first presented about 2019, Steve Keach in my office, and then we've done a couple of hearings as Robert just explained. What we'd like to do is extend Charles Road. We'd like to extend Charles Road as stated, and then add a turnaround at the end of Elizabeth. We'd have one lot that would be accessed off Elizabeth, and then the other 7 would be off of Charles. As the board members will remember from last time, this plan was from 1969, so there's a lot of balancing between today's current regulations and what was originally approved back then, and getting a plan that meets the current requirements of the town, the state, and the review engineers. What I'd like to do is kind of jump to the waivers because they represent the changes that I've made on the plan since the last time that we've been here. On the staff's memo, they outline waiver requests. They've got numbers 1 through 7 on here. What we have done is removed numbers 4, 5, and 6 by proposing underground electric to come down and through the development on the plan. So that's in your plan set there. So that gets rid of 4, 5, and 6. That really leaves us with 2. The first 3 are all 412. It's B, C, and D. And then number 7 is 420. I'm going to go straight to the 421 first. This one is related to the sidewalks. Actually, first let me explain the utilities. The reason that this applicant originally came with overhead electric is that the underground electric in this neighborhood currently is not able to be utilized. The power company will not touch it. So that is why the plans originally had overhead coming down through the site. But listening to the abutters at the last hearing, plus board members, obviously, you know, I'm here telling you that the things have changed and you've got to give a little leeway to us. Well, at the same time, things have changed and it was underground back in 1969 instead of above ground. So we agree that it makes sense to go underground here and keep it consistent throughout the neighborhood. So that's why kind of we changed, why we started originally with the overhead, but listening to what's there, we agree to go with the underground electric.
Thank you for doing that.
As far as the pedestrian sidewalk waiver, so we are requesting a sidewalk waiver. I think it's pretty obvious that the time of this subdivision, there's no sidewalks that currently come down Elizabeth Drive. I couldn't find any on a Google map how close they actually are to this site to be able to access for snow plowing and maintenance and that type of stuff. I'm sure Nelson will be able to tell me right off the bat the distance that they are. But I don't think it's a distance that the town can maintain and put a sidewalk on, number one. Number two, we're only improving, you know, half of Charles Road. Obviously, the planning board could make us put sidewalk on Elizabeth, but that's typically not what you would do. Again, I think that some of the trade-off with the underground electric with something like the sidewalk makes sense. And then what the biggest comment from the last planning board hearing was access out to the power lines here and the potential for the abutters to be able to do a circular kind of walk that they have been said that they're doing today. So I kind of had gone back and forth with a few different things, and you'll see from some of the letters from abutters and stuff like that, this right of way, because, you know, it's the half of the right of way goes to one owner, second half goes to us. I originally thought I could put an easement over this here, but then again, that would be encumbering somebody that's an abutter that is actually getting the land from us here. So what I propose is a 10-foot wide pedestrian access on our land that we're proposing that comes up to the end of this cul-de-sac here. I also propose the same thing over on this side here so they can make it to the power lines and go out. So I propose 2 locations for both of those. However, in my reviews tonight, in going through the abutter information that was presented last time and since we've been here, the end of this cul-de-sac here has a slope coming up. I made the mistake assuming it was grass. It's a 1.5 to 1 riprap slope. That is my mistake. So instead of ending the sidewalk, the walking path here, one of the things that happened going underground electric, the power company was going to run poles all the way down Elizabeth for us for free and to get access to lot 15 here. Obviously, if we're running underground electric down Charles, I don't want to also run it down Elizabeth. So we're going to bring electric in through here. And I showed an easement right through here. I want to expand that easement a little bit in here to wrap this walkway around and then back up to the path that's there, so that it's easier access for walking around to complete the circle. So I think with what we kind of proposed with some of the changes to access out to the power lines, underground electric for the aesthetics, I think the sidewalk waivers make sense in this location of town for this development. The other waiver is related to 4.12, and that is, I put them together. It's B, C, and D. They're all related to road design stuff. That's why they're all under 4.12. They are related to the 9% grade. At the last hearing, you asked me to, because as Steve Keach has presented to you guys, and I did it the last time, we all kept saying, well, it's only 15 feet for 9%. One of the board members asked me, well, I think the abutters brought up that the waiver is actually for above 8%. Where does the 8% happen from? So we went into the profiles here, and basically at station, it's right about 349. Right about here, as it goes under 8%, it gets like 7.94. And then on the other side, it was 475. So it's about right here where it starts flattening out. So that gives us approximately 125 feet at over 8%. So instead of 15 at 9, it's 125 over 8%. The other location, and again, this comes back to Elizabeth currently right now is a straight road through. And as going through this process with DPW, we propose to tee that up at this location here. So currently, the dotted line is the current. Currently, it's about 9.1% as it comes up and around the corner. We're able to reduce it to 8.69 and create a stopping distance so that people are not cruising around the corner. It's actually coming to a stop distance. And that is the waivers that we're asking for on the 9%. The other one is related to cul-de-sac length. And that one is kind of clear here. Again, the total length to this point here is 1,450. We're allowed 1,200. So again, we're not coming down the majority of it from the cutoff on Elizabeth down to this road here. We are at, so at the end of the cul-de-sac here is approximately 1,250. There's 1,050, sorry, 1,100 right here. And from the end of Elizabeth and that, we start with our 0 at this point here, 150. So it's about 200. So we're talking our road new is approximately 900 feet down out of that 1,450 distance. Again, we're basing this development and design off the plans from 1969. Like I explained at the last hearing, we're moving a lot in this location here, combining them with doing some right-of-way stuff here, making the curve come down, obviously redoing Squires and cleaning up Elizabeth Drive at the end. Again, this has been a balance between working with DPW, working with the town, and working with staff to come up with something that fits in a project that is approved back then and was half built out and has rights to be able to be finished to be built out. Currently, from a review standpoint, we've gotten this email here is from Gloria Andrews. She works at DES. She's reviewing our alteration of terrain permit. She had asked for a couple things on the sheets down in here. We had given them to her. All looks good. I'll put you on the expedited list for the New Hampshire Fish and Game. I'm not sure if the board knows what happened about last June with the New Hampshire Fish and Game, but they required everybody to do a wildlife study on their properties that had an alteration of terrain permit. They only had one person to review it. So currently she's got 16 applications in front of her, but we are all set from the drainage standpoint, the alteration of terrain standpoint, and she's working through the reviews that we had gotten some comments back in December, gotten them back to her December 18th and just waiting for her to work through. I think that's my presentation tonight, and kind of take any comments or questions that you guys have and kind of work it through from there. So thank you.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you for taking into consideration the feedback you got from the board and the abutters with respect to the waiver request about utilities. I agree with that choice. I think that was a difficult waiver to support given what we require of other neighborhoods. So thank you for withdrawing the ones about underground utilities. And we'll take up the other ones that you requested in a little bit. I want to let other board members have comments or questions about anything to do with the application, and then we'll talk about the waivers. Any comments or questions by members of the board? Let's see, I've got to arrange this so I could see all the names. Nelson, I see you.
Well, just to follow up, I thank Matt for the changes he's made. I've got a couple of questions on it. I don't know if you want to go into those detailed questions now, but I think I agree with the suggestion on underground utilities. I think that's where I wanted to go, and makes sense with what's there already, that we can continue that on the other piece of or the new Charles Road. The question I had to do with, he talked a bit about pedestrian way, and I think he solved part of the problem in that we now will have I think he said 10-foot wide right of way or walkway from the cul-de-sac on the new Charles Road up to the power line. And that requires some shifting around, as you point out, because of the slopes, and that was a concern. The other thought I had, or concern I had, was connecting that to the Elizabeth Drive, and the end of Elizabeth Drive also wants to connect into that with a pedestrian way. And so I'll let Matt comment on that. Maybe he just didn't talk about it, but I'd like to hear about that. And I'll leave it there for now. I got other questions for later, but without getting off into the weeds, let's stay with these questions for the moment.
Right. Matt, go ahead and address that one if you'd like to.
So at the end of Elizabeth Drive here, we're proposing this turnaround, Nelson, here and here.
Yep.
So what I want to do is have the easement come around and come right up to the right of way. So this is right of way again right here. So they're in the right of way, Elizabeth Drive, and they're on pavement now from the new extension of it.
Oh,
so it's connected.
Okay, so it's connected, and then it also connects down to Charles.
Yes, it connects Charles through here.
Yeah.
And then if you go back a sheet.
You know what drives me crazy is that this one's upside down from the other view.
Yeah, you change the orientation on each of your sheets.
It took me a while to work through this, Matt. For next time.
I'll work on that. I don't have much to say. That's the technical guys.
Well, tell them.
Tell them we have a lot of say in that.
Yeah. I will. I'll pass it on.
Thank you. Okay, so I think you've answered my question that we've got pedestrian access from both the cul-de-sac at the end of Charles and the Hammerhead at the end of Elizabeth. And they will connect to this new right away. That's okay. Thank you. Those are good improvements.
Thank you, Nelson. Now, for the benefit of the board members, we've already accepted the application as complete, and so the time is right to have any general discussion that you'd like, as well as any specific questions about the waivers, and then we can go in any direction the board wishes to go with addressing those waivers and also gathering some public testimony. With that in mind, floor's open. Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Matt, just to dovetail off of Nelson, absolutely concur with the utilities going underground. So thank you very much for doing that. I appreciate that. I want to circle back to this. The last time we talked on this presentation, I floated the idea about a conservation easement on Squires Drive. And I'm looking at sheet 2 of 13 where parcel H, I think parcel H has that 10-foot wide pedestrian easement, but it still looks like that parcel J is going to be released from dedication. I guess, has that conversation been had? Is that still something fluid? Is it Pollyanna-ish on my regard to still float the idea? I guess I just would like to know what the applicant's perspective is on that, and then whether or not it has a future.
So I went and sat down with staff at one point to see what their thoughts were first. And it was something at the end of a road that doesn't make sense there. And then I talked to Greg Michael on how, again, it's the same problem I had with the detention pond on that piece beforehand. I'm encumbering it before I give it back to 3A lot 17. Those people are more than able to give it back to the town or do a concert, do something like that if they would like to after the fact. But I cannot encumber what is their land to the center of the roadway at this point. And that's why I had to put the pond over on this side from our last application and get everything completely off of that piece there. And this piece here, which goes back to 3A24, because again, that was a nice little spot to kind of come up and around that way. So I can't encumber their rights. They could come and do it, but I didn't have the ability to work with them, obviously, in this project.
So what you're saying is that 3A17 still retains the fee to parcel J?
Yeah, they'll be getting this parcel back.
Has the owners of 3A17 been made aware of that?
I do not know. I don't have an answer to that.
Okay. We received yesterday from staff 5 different letters from the resident that I believe resides at 3A17. Did you have an opportunity to look at the individual's feedback by any chance?
I went through all of those there, Mr. Boyd, and from my standpoint right now, I've got the town of Merrimack, who has Fuss and O'Neill doing their engineering review of my plans. We're addressing their comments that they've had from that. I also have the state PEs reviewing my plans. I've tried to address the waivers and some of the questions they had there. But some of the plan stuff in that, in my opinion, is stuff that's being reviewed by I'm paying your staff to be reviewed, that stuff right now. So I didn't know how much you wanted me to kind of go.
It may be, thanks, Matt. I don't mean to interrupt you. Well, yeah, I do. I'm the chair. I did mean to interrupt you. I believe that Mr. Sauter may intend to offer some testimony related to his letters, and to the extent that there's some response from you on those, it may be appropriate to defer the response to it until he's offered those up and told us what he wants us to know about them, just so that we can keep that. I'm sorry, Bill.
Matt, I was going to say, Matt, if I put you on the hot seat, I apologize. That was not my intent. My intent was to make sure that you were aware of the concerns raised by the abutter, and that whatever could be incorporated, whatever could not be incorporated, and that the concerns were being addressed for the resident at 3A17. So that was my only line. My larger concern was just making sure that we have some type of pedestrian access in the neighborhood that reflects, it's probably not the right term to use, but I know you'll understand what I'm saying, to reflect the level of prescription that exists over that particular access point to get into to get into that section of woods. So that was really my only line of questioning tonight. So I am going to be curious to hear if Mr. Souter's on the line. I'll be curious to hear what he has to say. So.
And if for whatever reason he isn't, then we can take a closer look at his letters, because I want to make sure they get, fair consideration from folks. I don't mean to shift those off. I just want to make sure that Mr. Sauter gets a chance to make his point before we counterpoint it.
Okay.
Other board members with comments or questions? Nelson.
I'll come back on again if no one else has anything. There were some allusions in one of Mr. Sauter's letters to, or maybe it was another abutter, who mentioned that in the past there had been problems with the test pits on these unbuilt lots, the lots that are on Charles, New Charles. And the question I have is, are we working with current test pit results from this, or what's the story with test pits for those lots, individual lots?
Matt, what are your thoughts?
Yep, hold on. There we go.
Oh, there they are.
Test pits were dug on 7/8/2019. And we did, 14 test pits here throughout it, and these were all done by my septic designer in our office, who stamps the stuff there for that. So this is what we base our drainage on and stuff like that.
And they're all okay. They all meet requirements, huh?
Yes.
Or you wouldn't be putting them up here. I can't read that too well because they're small.
Yeah, seasonal high waters average about 26 inches, 30 inches, 32, 40. That's pretty average, 36.
Yeah.
You get down here, we had one that was 24, 46, 54. Bottom of hole, 48, 60 inches. So no ledge hit there. So pretty standard.
Yeah, no ledge, huh?
No, I mean, you got loamy sand, granule loamy sand, and then a loamy, nothing where these ones were.
Yeah. Okay, it may be something that goes back to the ancient past then that they were referring to. I did want to talk about the other thing is, are there wetlands anywhere on this site?
Yes, I have one wetland on site.
Okay, where is that?
Right there.
Oh.
About 93 square feet. And I had to put a buffer around it of a 25 foot and a 40 there on the latest plans.
Okay.
93 square feet. Throw a bag of kitty litter in there and no, don't do that.
No,
don't do that. Yeah. The existing Elizabeth Drive, was that built to town standards? The road that's in there.
Not current town standard. I mean, not current because it's over 9%.
I meant more in the subgrade and the foundation for the road.
I don't have that answer for you.
You don't know, but it's not your intention to do anything with it. But the new road you will build to town standards, the new Charles, and it will have the proper subgrade. There's a question about subgrade depth. One place was...
Obviously, we're replacing this in here up to there, and then obviously replacing the end with the turnaround here. And like I said, we're picking up the drainage to get drainage off the road and stuff like that. But no, the section between here and here that was probably put in 1970, 72. I don't know.
Yeah, and you will do current standards on the new Charles down south of, or I guess to the east of this.
Yeah, I'm not asking for any waivers on that.
No, okay. The existing, has the town accepted Elizabeth as it is now? Is that an accepted town road?
Would have to have been. They're maintaining it, yes.
Well, yeah, I thought they probably were, but I just didn't know where their acceptance was, or. Wetlands, we've taken care of the wetlands. There was issues with the, I think it's the Cul-De-Sac on Charles, where the they talked about the drop off from the cul-de-sac and the presence or absence of fencing to prevent little children or bicycles.
I thought I read that if the guardrail, let me just go back to plan here. I thought that statement was this slope here, that the guardrail should also have a fence because of this slope here.
Okay, it was there. Yeah, okay.
We've got guardrail that runs along this here. That's what's proposed, and that's what we're required to do.
Okay, you
I
just
don't know if we've ever put a fence behind guardrail.
Pardon?
I don't know that we've ever put a fence behind guardrail.
Yeah. Is the same prevail around the Hammerhead on the Elizabeth?
Up here we've got right there guardrail.
There's guardrail. Okay, that's quite a drop off there, isn't it?
Yep. It's existing. You can see a lot of this here too.
Yeah, I had
2 to 1.
I had trouble with the lack of let's say an existing conditions plan on this site. I couldn't tell where those contours were, and I guess now we've got one blown up enough I can count up or down.
Right.
It's really hard to interpret from the copies I got. You got a lot more visibility on this. We'll say that. The Souter driveway, I'm sure he'll talk about that, or you will. And oh, there's a piece of green space on here, but back up to the intersection, I think, of Elizabeth and Charles. Right in there, there's along Charles, there's a piece of property that's identified in the original plan as green space. And it doesn't seem to be part of anything we're talking about. Let's see, there you go, down, there you are, you got it.
A green belt.
Green belt, sorry, yeah.
So let's look at the stamp plan. So yep, that's shown here. Hold on a sec. So that's shown, so that'd be this belt right here, that line right there.
Well, it's the piece of property that, yeah.
I didn't put any owner on it here, so I don't know who the owner is there.
I don't either. Is it part of this? It's not part of your plan in any way?
Nope.
Is it still green space that accrues to the?
From the pictures here, from the photos, it sure looks like I've got street shots here. So that would be this area kind of on the side here. So, and then I guess it's over here. So I don't really have a good shot of it right there. The overhead probably has it.
Well, it just looks like trees.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have, it appears, I mean, we're leaving it. You know, we're not touching that up in there because this comes this way here and tees in now over in here. So we're actually creating a little bit more of it.
Yeah, I know you did clip it a bit, I think, but.
I think they're unclipping it. It's curved to that now and they're straightening it out.
Oh, they're straightening it out.
Right. So here's the existing right there coming across.
Yeah.
And we're actually going straight in. So increasing it.
Slightly. Yeah.
Really just pulling it back in the right of way.
Yeah, I just wondered if this was part of the homeowners association or something that went with the original subdivision.
It's pretty interesting that on the original plan, they actually called green belt. Like they didn't even think in '69 they were doing that type of stuff. So
no, they didn't give it a lot number or map number or anything.
Nothing.
Who's paying the taxes?
I'm guessing nobody.
Well, I guess I'd like to know more about that if you can do a little research there. That's about all I have for open items right now.
Other members of the board have any? All right. So board members, we can proceed in one of two directions for next. We could consider waiver requests, or we could take in some public testimony, and then whichever one we do first, we'll do the other one second. What's your preference?
I would prefer public testimony.
As would I.
Good enough for me. Let's open up the floor and hear if there's any abutters or interested citizens who wish to weigh in. *9 will raise your hand. I see a raised hand. It doesn't have a phone number. It just says call in user number 1, but it's the only raised hand I see on the screen. So let's go with that one. Oh, I got 2 now. So go with call in user 1, hit *6, and then introduce yourself and tell us what's on your mind.
Hello, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please introduce yourself and then tell us your testimony.
Mr. Chairman, my name is John Sauter. I live at 9 Elizabeth Drive, which is map 3A, lot 17 on your map.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you're here.
I have several items I would like to talk about. Would it be all right if we had a discussion on each, or rather than me going through all of them and having discussion on all of them together?
You can proceed in any order that you'd like. However, I have to caution you that this is an opportunity for public testimony, not necessarily discussion where you're interacting with or asking questions of us. So provide us whatever testimony you'd like, and we will listen.
Okay. My first item is on the cover sheet for the plans. Squires Drive is incorrectly shown as Squires Road. Also, the vicinity map indicates that the land area being impacted by this plan is north of Merrimack Town Hall, but actually it is southwest.
All right, thank you.
Shall I continue?
Yes, please. Please continue.
My next item is, when Normandy Estates was originally built, Elizabeth Drive was left incomplete. To prevent that from happening again, I asked the planning board to require a completion bond as a condition of approval of the plan.
All right, thank you. Anything else?
My next item, in the April 2nd, 2021 letter from Keith Nordstrom responding to town comments, item 6F states that Charles Road Extension is no longer a part of this submission. That being the case, the street name should not appear on the plans. Once the name is removed, the Class 6 road named Charles Road on Plan 4792 will still be called Charles Road. The west branch of Elizabeth Drive should therefore be given a different name, else Charles Road is not a linear street but forms a Y. I suggest the name Psycho Lane in keeping with the theme of Normandy Estates.
Thank you. What else is on your mind?
I would like to discuss the complete drainage report.
Please do.
I have a letter whose subject is complete drainage report. I'll skip the introduction and just read the main items in it.
Okay.
In the complete drainage report submitted April 2nd, no source is given for the USGS exhibit on page 6. The date of the preparation of the exhibit is given as 10/19/2020, but the source data must be much older since it does not show Elizabeth Drive as a paved road. I asked the planning board to require that this document be properly sourced and, if possible, use a source less than 50 years old.
Okay.
The USGS exhibit on page 7 of the complete drainage report is also not sourced and appears to be a recent aerial or satellite photograph with lot lines, street names, and lot numbers overlaid. I asked the planning board to require that this document be properly sourced. It does not seem to have any USGS content.
What was that in reference to? Is that part of the drainage report, John?
Yes, I'm discussing the complete drainage report, page 7.
Okay, thank you.
All right, please continue.
The 4 photographs on page 8 and 9 of the complete drainage report are undated. I asked the planning board to require that these photographs be dated since the appearance of the property depends heavily upon the season of the year.
Okay, please continue.
Pages 51 through 69 of the complete drainage report are marked confidential by the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. I ask the planning board to require the applicant to get written permission from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services to make this information public as a condition for public consideration of this document.
All right. Please continue.
Pages 75 through 93 of the complete drainage report have the notation, enter your company name here in curly brackets. I ask the planning board to require that the text be replaced with the name of the company or person who prepared the HydroCAD report.
Okay, please continue. You don't need to pause after each of the points. Please just continue.
Okay. The HydroCAD reports in the complete drainage report appear to have been done using HydroCAD version 10.00-26, which was released March 10th, 2020. A greatly improved version of HydroCAD, known as 10.1, was first released on February 10th, 2020, and was most recently updated on November 16th, 2020. I asked the planning board to require the applicant to rerun the HydroCAD reports using the current version of HydroCAD, which is significantly enhanced over version 10.0. Another item that I didn't have in my letter, the pond on Squires Drive seems to have been moved from the east side to the west side of Squires Drive since the March 16th planning board meeting. However, the HydroCAD report was printed on November 30th, 2020, when the pond was still on the east side of Squires Drive. I don't see how it is possible to move a pond but not rerun the hydrology analysis. Perhaps I am confused and the pond was not moved. Item 7, for purposes of peer review by Fuss and O'Neill, I ask that the planning board require the applicant to include a machine readable copy of his input to HydroCAD as part of this submission, or to make it available to Fuss and O'Neill upon their request. Item 8, page 140 of the complete drainage report, which is the first page of the stormwater operation and maintenance plan, locates Normandy Estates at 334 Central Street in Hudson, New Hampshire. This is incorrect. Normandy Estates is located in Merrimack, New Hampshire. I note that this problem has been corrected in a separate document called Stormwater Operation and Maintenance Plan, which was submitted to the planning board by Keach Nordstrom on April 2nd, 2021. Perhaps pages 140 through 159 of the complete drainage report could be replaced by the Stormwater Operation and Maintenance Plan document. Item 9, page 142 of the complete drainage report, under documentation, states that the maintenance log will be accessible to Hudson staff. I suggest that this is an error. Hudson should be replaced by Merrimack. I note that this error has been corrected in the Stormwater Operation and Maintenance Plan document. In addition, I ask that the log be made accessible to the public. Mr. Chairman, I would now like to discuss land ownership. I have a letter into the board on this subject. I will skip the introductory material and begin on sheet 1 of 13, lot line adjustment plan. In the notes section states that the purpose of the plan is, among other things, to undedicate portions of the Charles Road, Squires Drive, and Elizabeth Drive right-of-ways, and to depict proposed easements. That same notes section also states that the owner of record is RCL Realty LLC, 11 Brienne Drive, Merrimack, New Hampshire, 03054, HCRD book 9119, page 75. However, the reference deed found at Hillsborough County Registry of Deeds book 9119, pages 75 and 76, recorded October 19th, 2018, conveys only lots 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14, as described on Plan 4792, from J&S Patterson to RCL Realty. That may give RCL Realty the ownership of the western half of Squires Drive, but they do not own the eastern half, which they call Parcel J, which is adjacent to Lot 5, Tax Map 3A17. Similarly, they do not own the land they call Parcel E, which is adjacent to Lot 15, Tax Map 3A24. Because the land does not belong to RCL Realty, I asked the planning board to add a condition to the approval that RCL Realty owns the land whose status they propose to change by releasing from dedication and creating drainage easements. And if I'm confused about where the pond is, they may also be adding a pond. I'm going to skip the remainder of this letter because it's just background information on how I discovered the ownership. And I'd like to go on to the driveways and buildings. Again, I have a letter into the planning board, and I will skip the introduction. On sheet 1 of 13, lot adjustment plan shows where several existing driveways intersect Elizabeth Drive. However, the driveway intersection for lot 3A17 is omitted. I ask that my driveway be added to the plan before it is approved, as required by section 4.05D of the subdivision regulations. The driveway needs to be depicted so the planning board and the public will have an opportunity to study and discuss the impact of the proposal on the driveway. I ask that the proposal not be approved until there has been a public hearing on a plan which includes my driveway. It would be helpful to see the locations of existing and future buildings so the planning board can judge the plan in the context of the neighborhood as it exists. I ask the planning board to require the applicant to show the location of proposed buildings because easements must be routed so that no buildings are on them. The location of existing buildings is required by section 4.05E of the subdivision regulations. I would like now to go on to my letter on Hammerhead issues. Again, I will skip the introductory material. Sheet 5 of 13, roadway plan and profile, section Elizabeth Drive turnaround plan, shows a hammerhead at the north end of Elizabeth Drive. The purpose of the hammerhead is to allow a Department of Public Works snowplow to reverse direction. To be sure it is fit for that purpose, I request the planning board add the following 2 conditions to the application. A, the applicant obtain from the Department of Public Works, within 65 days of the conditional approval of this plan, a letter stating that the hammerhead will, if built according to the plan, be adequate for turning around Department of Public Works vehicles, even when plowing snow during a blizzard. B, the applicant obtain from the Department of Public Works, within 65 days of the completion of the hammerhead, a letter stating that the hammerhead, as built, is adequate for turning around Department of Public Works vehicles, even when plowing snow during a blizzard. Number 2, the west end of the hammerhead is in an area with a lot of slope. The plan shows that the construction of the hammerhead will greatly increase the slope to 1.5 to 1, which is enough to endanger a child who might walk near it and fall off. The plan also shows an 80 linear foot guardrail, but it is not clear whether this guardrail constitutes a fence that would keep children away from the slope. If it does not, I ask the planning board to reject the application since an unsafe street violates section 4.13A of the subdivision regulations. If it is argued that the area can be made safe by adding a fence on the west end of the hammerhead, or that the guardrail is such a fence, or can be upgraded to become such a fence, I would ask the planning board to reject this solution because a child protection fence will prevent the Department of Public Works from disposing of snow plowed from Elizabeth Drive over the drop-off, which is their current practice. If it is argued that the area can be made safe by regrading to eliminate the excessive slope, and the planning board finds this argument persuasive, I would ask that the plan be updated to show a slope no greater than the current slope before it is approved. Item 3, the 10-foot wide pedestrian easement from the Charles Road Cul-De-Sac to the hammerhead is not walkable because of the extreme slope at the hammerhead. I ask that the planning board require something like a stairway at the hammerhead to make it possible to walk along the pedestrian easement. It might also be necessary to add a gate in the 80-foot guardrail depending on its height. I also ask that the pedestrian easement be widened to 20 feet in conformance with subdivision regulation section 4.13E. Mr. Chairman, I would like to go on to the subject of waivers. I will again skip the, sorry?
Please do. Please do. I'm following along.
I will again skip the introductory material in my letter. The applicant has requested 7 waivers. That's now down to 4 from the subdivision regulations. The remaining ones are about street grades, length of cul-de-sac, and a maximum grade on approach, and the paved sidewalk. The request for a waiver for sidewalks is well justified. For the others, however, the reasons given are insufficient, amounting to saying that the regulations would be hard to comply with. The fact that Normandy Estates was laid out 50 years ago is not sufficient. Some parts of Merrimack are much older. The regulations mean nothing if they can be waived merely because complying with them is hard. Unless there is something special about the land that makes the regulations unreasonable as applied to it, the regulations should be enforced, even if that means the lots are unbuildable. I ask that these waiver requests, and thus the plan, be rejected unless the applicant can provide a good reason for waiving each of the road and utility standards for which he requests a waiver. If it is argued that the purpose of section 4.12 of the subdivision regulations is safety, and the road as designed is perfectly safe, and the planning board is persuaded by this argument, I would request the planning board add the following conditions to the application. The applicant can obtain from the Department of Public Works, within 65 days of the conditional approval of this plan, a letter stating that the new section of Charles Road will, if built according to the plan, be safe for Department of Public Works vehicles, even when plowing snow during a blizzard. 2, the applicant obtained from the fire department, within 65 days of the conditional approval of this plan, a letter stating that the long cul-de-sac road will, if built according to the plan, not pose an unreasonable risk that emergency vehicles would be unable to reach all of the homes on Charles Road, even during a blizzard. Number 3, the applicant obtained from the Department of Public Works, within 65 days of the completion of construction of the new section of Charles Road, a letter stating that the new section of Charles Road, as built, is safe for Department of Public Works vehicles, even when plowing snow during a blizzard. 4, the applicant obtained from the fire department, within 65 days of the completion of the construction of the new section of Charles Road, a letter stating that emergency vehicles are likely to be able to reach all of the homes on Charles Road, as built, even during a blizzard. Mr. Chairman, I do have another item I'd like to speak about.
Of course,
now that I've finished my letter.
Yes, please do.
Except I'm having trouble finding it in my pile of paperwork here. Just a moment.
Take your time.
Here we are. A few weeks ago, I provided to the Community Development Department a manila envelope containing photographs. I hope that all of the members of the planning board have that manila envelope with them. This is the Squires Drive walkthrough. There are 13 photographs in the envelope. Mr. Chairman, I will skip all this if you do not have it.
That was distributed to all planning board members before the previous meeting. I don't know whether each member of the planning board has it with them tonight or retained it, but it is information that we have had and have reviewed. Please offer any testimony that you'd like with respect to the photographs.
Okay. Squires Drive in Merrimack, New Hampshire is a paper street located off Elizabeth Drive. When Normandy Estates was laid out in 1969, Squires Drive was shown as a dead-end street, providing access to the lot now known as 3A-15. The land was cleared, but not paved. This walkthrough is reference to a set of 13 numbered pictures taken September 8th, 2020. Picture 1. The numbers, by the way, are in the upper right corner of each picture. We are standing on Elizabeth Drive, looking north toward its end. Picture 2. As we walk towards the end of Elizabeth Drive, we can see that there is some cleared area beyond the pavement. Picture 3. Reaching the end of the pavement, we see that there is an opening in the trees beyond the cleared area. Picture 4. As we walk across the cleared area, we see that the opening is 2 tracks, which turn right and vanish beyond our sight. Picture 5. Following the tracks, we see that they continue to what appears to be an open area. Picture 6. As we approach the end of Squires Drive, we can now see the open area more clearly. Picture 7. The open area turns out to be the cleared area intended as the cul-de-sac for Squires Drive. Picture 8. From the far side of the cul-de-sac, we can look back at Squires Drive. Pictures 9, 10, 11, and 12 we walk south back along Squires Drive. Picture 13, we are back at the beginning of Squires Drive. The pavement marks the end of Elizabeth Drive. The board members will notice that the main color in all of these pictures is green, and that is why we call this our green space. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for indulging me.
Before you leave that, the discussion of the photographs, you went through them and you walked us through what we were looking at very clearly. If there's something you wish the planning board to deduce or draw from having you looked at those photographs, please provide testimony about that. What is it that we are supposed to conclude from seeing the photographs?
I asked the board to conclude that this area functions as a green space for the Normandy Estates. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that. Is there other testimony you wish to provide?
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, no problem.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe other people are waiting to testify, and so I will yield to them.
Yep, there are. There's one other individual so far with a raised hand, but we will call on that individual, and then obviously anybody in the meantime that wants to raise their hand can also press star 9 to do so. The other hand that's raised is the telephone number that ends in 441. If that individual is here, press star 6 to unmute yourself and then introduce yourself and offer your testimony to the board.
Sure. James Ferreira, if everybody can hear me.
I can. Thank you, James.
All right. Thanks for allowing me to address some concerns that I have. One of the concerns that I have is I am an abutter to this proposed project, and my property is incorrectly identified, and it's actually showing ownership for my neighbor instead of myself. And that would be on page 3 of 15 in the PDF files on map 3A lot 45-8. I own 7 acres at the end of Squires Drive and basically own the entire PSNH, or whatever they're calling themselves, easement, where the power lines are. It's
okay,
lot
so you're the owner of
45-8.
45-8. I gotcha. So my copy says David D. and Nora Hunt. And
that's wrong.
Indicating that's incorrect. Okay.
Very much so.
All right. Other information that you'd like the board to consider?
I do. So, I mean, it just concerns me that the zoning board would approve maps with inconsistencies and inaccuracies. You know, I think my previous colleague, you know, in this with me, articulated them a little bit clearer, but there's a lot of inconsistencies with the plans that were provided for you guys to vote on something of this size and magnitude. I feel the inaccuracy should be kicked back to the zoning board for review, and proper things be laid out by RCL. Purposes of variances should, I'm going to continue now. Thank you. Purposes of variances should not be based on exclusively a desire to make more money out of a piece of property. Local zoning boards do not have the authority to grant variances unless they first find that there is some peculiar condition of the land or structure not typically in the local zoning district that will create a hardship for the ownership.
James, can I interrupt you for 1 second? I'll let you continue. Sure. And regardless of how you respond to what my comment is, I won't interrupt you and let you continue. But the zoning board has the authority over its variances. We do not. We don't review them. We don't second guess them. They don't require our approval or any of that. So that's outside the scope of what we're allowed to look at. But with that in mind, please provide whatever testimony you'd like us to hear.
Fair enough. I appreciate you pointing that out. I will restate that I just think the maps that they are approving should be accurate, and the map that was set forth in this document is not. So New Hampshire Rev Statute 674.39 on the base flood elevation data on 5 acres or 50 lots, whichever less. I just would like to have a clear look on that flood data. I'm not sure if it's up to date on the file, so that was one of my concerns. Water and well studies, I think, have been somewhat addressed. You know, I want to remind this board and the town of all the issues that are transpiring with St. Cobain and our current water supply. And that really needs to be taken serious when variances are given and you're trying to stick more houses on a smaller piece of property. Road and utility standards, page 27, 4.12 on street design. Statute states that street grades shall not exceed over 6% over an 800 foot or 8% over 600 feet. I think it was very clear that they are asking for additional variances with these grades. If you folks have walked the property back there, I really feel that this poses a severe risk to the health and well-being of that community that's going back there with fire, EMS, and other public works for safety and being able to respond to an emergency. It is a very, very steep grade back there. And then the other question that I have in terms of the animal studies that have been done with Fish and Wildlife, is there anything that's recent within the last 5 or so years? There's a number of endangered species of birds back there. I did not see that in any of the reports that were presented by RCL. I didn't see any of the reports that showed moose, deer, turkey, different other turtles, snakes, reptiles on these animal and wildlife reports. And I'm just curious on how up to date that is as we keep referring back to plans from 1969.
Thank you for those comments. Do you have more, or have you reached the end of what you wanted to offer?
No, that's it for this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ferreira. Another hand that's raised is a phone number that ends in 862. If that individual is prepared, please press *6 to unmute yourself, then introduce us and tell us what testimony you'd like the board to consider.
Hello, Mr. Chairman. This is Bruce Peterson, 3 Elizabeth Drive. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Bruce.
You're welcome. I just have a relatively few things, some comments and some issues. The first one I have is on February 11th of this year, the King family sent a memo to the planning board reference a few concerns they have, but one of them was they own a circular driveway on their lot, which is lot 28. And so they have 2 entrances from Elizabeth Drive. The applicant's plan only shows 1 driveway entrance, and that driveway entrance that's missing is the closest one to Charles Road, and one that will be heavily impacted by the applicant's proposal to work on Elizabeth Drive, which includes a grade up to, I think, 9%. So it's still not on the most recent plan, dated April 2nd, 2021. So we request that both driveway entrances be depicted on the applicant's plan so the planning board, the public, and the applicant will have the opportunity to study and comment on the impact of this proposal on all their driveways. And also request that no approval be made until that opportunity exists. Thanks, Matt, for putting the underground utilities down Charles Road. Appreciate that. I still believe I still see a telephone pole at the end of Elizabeth Drive by lot 17. Is that still on the plan?
So offer the testimony that you'd like to, and we'll convey to Matt his opportunity to respond to all of it in the end.
I apologize, yes. Anyway, thanks to Matt. And then we do have a question about why the utility pole is still on the plan, that one utility pole, and how power is getting to that. I know that Matt said that I think power now is going to get to lot 15 coming from some other direction. So I'm assuming that pole won't be used now. The Town of Merrimack subdivision regulations, paragraph 4.05G requires deed restrictions to be included in the plan. I haven't seen any deed restrictions included with the plan. The Town of Merrimack road and utility standards state that a dead end and cul-de-sac streets not exceed 1,200 feet from intersecting through street. To propose L-shaped turnaround at the end of Elizabeth Drive is more than 1,200 feet from Bates Road. And I believe Bates Road should be depicted somewhere on the plan, so that could be measured by anybody, the distance to the end of the Charles Road cul-de-sac and the end of Elizabeth Drive turnaround. we were just curious. I think, I don't know if Matt addressed it fully, but how power is getting to lot 14 and lot 15. Does Comcast have to make a statement that they will be able to provide service to all the proposed lots? That's a question that we have. A question that, Mr. Chairman, maybe you can answer now for me is, when does DPW approve the driveway configurations? Is that before the final approval?
Sure. I'm happy to address your questions, even though I had mentioned a couple of times this is your chance to offer that. But when the owner of a particular lot decides where they would like their driveway to be and where their home would be, they'd apply for building permits and the appropriate approvals from DPW for the driveway cut. In a typical subdivision, and as to the undeveloped lots, the planning board doesn't take into consideration the location of the home's footprint. The only thing that's sort of related to that we do take into account is the applicant's required to show a potential area where a septic system might lie, and comply with the regulations. Even then, it doesn't mean the septic system has to go there. It just has to show that there's a sizable enough space for there to be one somewhere on the lot. So driveways and proposed buildings are not necessary to be shown on here unless there's some question about the viability of a driveway. For example, if there's a 10% slope or something like that, someone would have to prove that they could do a driveway there. As to the existing buildings and driveways, I agree with some of the earlier testimony. Those things should be on the plans.
Okay, thank you. And I don't think anybody really knows whether that driveway going up to lot 14 would be greater than 10% or not. As the Steve Leach has said, or Keisha said, that the terrain takes off like a rocket after that cul-de-sac at the end of Charles Road, the proposed Charles Road. Thank you for the answer. We wanted to know, what's the legal process that has to be followed to change Charles Road from a Class 6 road to a Class 5 road? And the last statement I'm going to make is, we hope that I'd like to just back up a second and just take a quick look, if you indulge me for a moment. The Elizabeth Drive was originally planned to be a U-shape from Charles Road to Charles Road. We all know that it couldn't be done. So Elizabeth Drive at least temporarily stopped. The DPW was in a bind. They had to build a makeshift, unapproved turnaround so their trucks can plow the street, Elizabeth Drive, and turn around. It was on a temporary basis, waiting for Elizabeth Drive to be continued or Squires Drive to be built out with a cul-de-sac turnaround on it. So now the applicant would like to forever make Elizabeth Drive a dead end. Okay. I hope that the planning board takes a step back at that point and say, okay, what do we have left over if Elizabeth Drive is a dead end? We have a temporary makeshift turnaround that DPW had to make. What's the best way to address a proper turnaround at the end of Elizabeth Drive? Now, I would suggest that if the applicant proposed a L-shaped turnaround like they're proposing at the end of Elizabeth Drive, if they propose that at the end of Charles Road instead of a cul-de-sac, I would suggest that the planning board probably would not approve that. And I would say that they probably shouldn't approve the same thing at the end of Elizabeth Drive, especially when 200 feet down the road from their proposed turnaround, there's a platted out, already approved cul-de-sac turnaround. So we would hope that you would take a step back, look at it from a fresh approach, a green approach, and maybe come around, maybe have a viable, safe turnaround at the end of Elizabeth Drive. I think that Squires Drive should be built out. Elizabeth Drive should take over Squires Drive, and Elizabeth Drive should end at the cul-de-sac at the current road called Squires Drive. That L-shaped turnaround, when the trucks are backing up, they're going to have to do approximately 90-degree turn while they're backing up, which creates a big blind spot in the mirror. You have 3 driveways right in that immediate area. You have a residential area. Quite frankly, I don't think that's a very safe operation, especially when you have a cul-de-sac turnaround 200 feet away. Thank you very much.
Thank you. for the thoughtful testimony. I don't know if there are other people who wish to testify. I thought it might be helpful, and we'll still sort of leave the public hearing open for a moment longer. But the memo that the staff provides to the planning board on this project, as well as every other, may be informative to some of the questions that folks are asking about the opinion of the Department of Public Works on the design of the turnaround or various other things that are in here. This is pretty typical of an approval for us, where there are conditions of approval that the staff has recommended that the board consider, and the board usually takes that advice to heart. And in these, there's item number 2 is to require all the state approvals and permits from DES, alteration of terrain, and fish and wildlife will be in there as well. That item number 4 is addressing the final comments from the town's peer review consultant, Fuss and O'Neill, and that relates to all of the drainage and other compliance items that they look at. Item 5 is that the fire department provides their feedback and their approval, and the applicant has to respond to their comments. Item number 6 is that the comments from Public Works, which are lettered A through J in the letter, the applicant's required to provide feedback on those. The Merrimack Village districts provided their comments, which include a fire hydrant at station 600, and they've got other comments in here from A to G. And then the planning board staff's technical comments, which often does include some of the typo type cleanups and then name cleanups. And so the people that offer the testimony are right on target in terms of the kinds of things that the planning board looks at. And I just wanted to assure them that the staff also looks at those things, and all of the town departments weigh in on the applications that are before us. And we rely on them for their feedback on the things like Hammerhead design, and is it sufficient, and what does the slope look like, and do guardrails meet the standards for roadways, and all of those kinds of things. So many of the things that we've heard tonight are already considered as a part of our review process, and we're blessed to have so many professionals who either work for the town as employees or work for the town as consultants, who take a look at these things and provide us that feedback. Are there other abutters or citizens who wish to weigh in? If you do, now's the time to press *9 on your phone to raise your hand. I don't see any at the moment, and so I'll close the public hearing. And then I'll invite Matt to respond to those, and I'll help guide you through some of the ones that I made notes about. Obviously, Matt, there were a number of ones with, just updating information about who the owner of a current parcel is. We heard some about showing driveways for 2 of the lots as they exist, and locations of buildings. Those do seem to be standard requirements for a plan that would eventually make it on there. The difference between Charles Road or Charles Drive, obviously clean up all those consistency and typo type things. The staff's usually good at picking through all of those things and getting you in the right shape for those. But comment on the ones that I just mentioned, as well as any others that were on your mind, and then the whole board will lead you through others that we heard from the testimony that we'd want to ring on.
So first thing, I just want to make it clear here, this 3A 5045A is David Nora Hunt at 6 Marianne Lane. The town tax map is not very clear on the abutter here, so I also notified, he's the other one. So I also notified 458-1, who is James Friera. So, and he is at 7 Marianne Lane. So, where the tax map and how we show the abutters here, it all comes down to the abutter notification. This is an abutter. He might have a boundary dispute that's shown different on tax map. That's not up to me to resolve. I notify everybody so that I'm covered. So everybody should be here that was here. Our plans, as you know, we do the best we can putting everything together. We're professionals that stamp these and have them reviewed by everybody. And you're right, I just looked at the cover sheet next to me, and it says Squires Road instead of Squires Drive. I guess I'd rather have those types of DD edits than anything major on the plans. As I said beforehand, DES, which reviews our drainage and specifically the detention ponds and everything that's there, is all set with our project, except for I've got to give them the easements for these two lots right here. They want to see them in the deed so that people that buy the property know that they're there. So the state's requiring that now. So did notify people there. Whether or not how the tax map's shown, that's not on me. Again, some of these lines, we show them as abutters. We don't survey, as you know, the abutting properties. We use tax maps to show approximate locations. As far as the grades and what we talked about on the roads, they're absolutely right. You come off of this thing and it drops. I mean, that's almost vertical. It might be 50% or so right there. So we're proposing a much gradual slope coming off. As I said, it's 8%. It's under 8% to 350. So it's under 8% this whole way here compared to what they are dropping down right now. Obviously, it's kind of equal to what once you get down there and why we use the 9%, and we're proposing this in our grade. It's matching what was down here there. And then we're coming through and we have some cuts and fills on the back half here, but it's really just to get down this slope that's almost at 50% and make something that is safe.
Now, Matt, as I understand our standard, it's that you can't exceed 8% for greater than 600 feet. Is that what our standard specifies, or is that a road standard from a different source?
I don't have that right here in front of me. Sorry, I thought it was 8% in general.
Maybe Robert can take a look at that while we continue to talk. But you mentioned earlier that you're above 8% for about 150 feet.
350 to 475, so about 125 feet. Yes.
125 feet of above 8%, and 15 feet above 9%.
Yes.
Okay. I want to make sure that we understand what it is that we're talking about. Okay, please continue to respond to some of the comments and things that we heard.
Yep. So that was related to the steep slopes and the profile of the road and asking for some of that. That was the abutter's address there. Peterson at the end, the driveways, you're absolutely right, Mr. Chairman. They should be shown on it. I'm going to have a discussion with survey in the morning. The pole at the end of right here that he picked up in my plan, proposed utility pole location by others, that's removed. That's not where we're coming in. We're coming in this direction here. I'm coming up with the utility underground to 15. Here's the driveway for 14, which would also have its electricity. The driveway for 15 is proposed to come off Elizabeth right here and come in. But the power will come off of Charles and come around this way. What I talked about that slope beforehand, increasing the pedestrian access around that area that's there.
Matt, while you're there, there's a pole that's been talked about in the discussions and some of the letters from Mr. Soder and so on. Is that pole, that's it, that you're just showing it right there?
Does that exist today, or was that originally part of something you were going to add?
Right. This was a proposed one. It was going to go underground from this point in. So as I said at the previous presentation, there was going to be overhead electric run all the way down, Elizabeth Drive.
And that's not happening anymore, and that will be removed from your plan.
No way. There's another pole that was talked about that they talked about. It had been hit by a couple of cars, and maybe it was out on Charles, or
probably this one right here. Here's our proposed utility pole. Existing utility pole is out here.
It's proposed. Yeah. I was looking for one that's already there. I went looking for it. I couldn't find it. That's why I asked the question here.
You went looking for it, or the plan looking for it?
Pardon?
You went looking at the site or on the plan?
I looked in both places and I can't find it. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I didn't know if you'd actually gone out to visit the location. I gotcha.
And I couldn't find a pole that had car markings on it because there was none that were that close to the road. But maybe one of the abutters knows where it is.
Let me, yep. And then one of the things else I had from Peterson was on the cul-de-sac here. I think as the chairman said, here's this kind of makeshift bulb that they kind of put at the end, I guess, to be able to turn around. So again, working with DPW, and I think we've heard tonight that this was probably what's the word? Maybe not put in with the full depth of subgrade and stuff like that. So obviously pulling it back to the end of it and redoing that and bringing the hammerhead down here. From a green standpoint, this is much less pavement than when I put the cul-de-sac at the other side. So I hear you on both sides. Some people like cul-de-sac, some people like hammerheads from a green standpoint. Again, this has been working with DPW on something was there and coming up with something that makes sense at the end of the road. John Squires stuff.
You can make somebody unhappy. One of each, right? No, go ahead. I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead.
John Sauter, again, went through a lot of the plan stuff there that is being reviewed by staff. Talked about the slope at the end here. What kind of Nelson has talked about, this is the existing slope that's there. So we ended it basically where that slope was. We did put the riprap at the end here, but again, this guardrail is safety guardrail for roadways. And as far as pedestrians or kids jumping over it, yes, they could climb over any fence to do that. But this is very typical of a town road everywhere we do. It's safe and it's designed to meet all your entities at the town's requirements. I basically just from his, a lot of my stuff was that, we're stamping everything with a PE stamp. Something happens, we're liable, we get sued. The review engineers have their PE stamps, the state as well. So I get it that there's some DD edits that we've missed on plans. That's why we have review engineers. I'll tell you straight up, I'm not perfect. And that's why we've gone through 2 reviews with everything here. And we've addressed everything that comes forward with us. And as I have with everything else that we've done in town. So that's kind of where we're at with it. What else did I miss there, Robert?
Thank you. You covered quite a lot of it. Some of the comments early about some of the things that were in drainage reports and sources of documents and things. I don't necessarily need to call on you to respond to it. That information is something that our peer review engineer takes into account when they determine and provide us with a report as to whether it complies with our regulations or not. I certainly think that if the staff believes it's necessary, they can provide Mr. Sauter's feedback to Fuss and O'Neill to find out if it affects their opinions. But I wouldn't expect that it does affect their opinions on those things. As far as information for my benefit, that isn't something that would typically be a focus of the planning board's discussion or vote on those. You don't have the locations of the houses for any of the existing lots, or at least the ones that are abutting lots that are part of this subdivision and road construction. I know that the proposed lots don't have any buildings on them, but tell me about, or are you able to show the locations of the houses on the existing Elizabeth Drive properties, or approximately, of course?
I'd be able to show them approximately. Obviously, we can't go on the people's property, but we can shoot that with a laser that we pick up approximate locations.
Yeah, I think some of the tax maps in the town's GIS has some rough information about the general location and shape of homes for the existing ones. Let me see. Let me make sure I'm going through the notes and the letters. I don't want to overlook anything that I wanted to make sure we had feedback on. Are other members of the board wish to weigh in while I'm taking a look at some of my resource material here?
I have one more thing that
Nelson, please.
Occurred to me while we were going through this. With regard to the new Charles Street, the driveways to those houses that are going to be built on that piece of road, are they able to meet the driveway slope requirements of the town? I couldn't figure out the configuration. I know those lots are steep, and I just don't know how steep, and if they're going to need some kind of run into some kind of problems when they try and build driveways through those. I think we have an 8% limit on driveways, a slope easement.
So as you come around the corner on lot 10 right here, you can see there's no grade change between the road and here. So obviously driveway coming here, you drop in 8 feet here. This would most likely be a walkout in the back here, and you'd be at grade in your front as you put the house in at that location there. As you continue down the road, again, you're meeting grade. You know, here's where they're cut in here. You're meeting grade in this location here. You're meeting grade in this location here. Now, driveways would come in this location here. This would probably be a split garage under, you know, with your garage, with your driveways and stuff like that, and then have your second floor walk out in the back. Everything will be submitted to the towns, not into, you know, coming back with waivers on those driveways and stuff like that. Again, the land lays out beautifully for walk out and walk and drive unders. I mean, again, here the road is sitting at an elevation of 272. 274. I'm at 260 right here. It's 14 feet. I mean, my house, I did a 9-foot walkout basement, and you're right on existing grade in the backyard there with your grade and stuff like that.
Those are going down, and
these are going down here, and then on this side here, you know, these would be your drive unders coming into the front side, and then you go up to your second floor in the back.
okay, as long as they're aware of the regulations of the town and that.
And then just to make it clear, 13 and 14 here, this is the driveway coming into 14. You can see I go down to this and then back up here 2 feet. So it drops 4 feet and back up 4 feet. Again, we're not dealing with that slope that they're talking about at the end of Elizabeth Drive. Yeah.
That's what I was concerned about. Yeah.
Okay. Matt, I was just looking through all of the letters that Mr. Sauter had provided and making sure that I was satisfied with the responses that I heard to the items on it that caught my attention. There were a couple of other technical errors or, you know, misnaming roads or something like that. I assume those will all be cleaned up. Things that refer to plans that are given to the Hudson Department of Public Works instead of the Merrimack Department. I think some of those may have already been caught and cleaned up, but attend to all of those to make sure that we've got those typo type things dealt with and addressed. Do other members of the board have comments or questions of the applicant or any of the feedback the applicant's given to the comments from the public? Okay, I see no board members raising their hands. And so at this time, let's take up the applicant's request for waivers. There are 2 general categories of waivers, one that has several waivers related to road design and one that has a single waiver related to construction of sidewalks. Let's deal with sidewalks first. That is a request for a waiver from section 4.20.2, which requires a paved pedestrian way or sidewalk. And the staff notes that section 4.061R is likely the better section to have sought a waiver from, but both properly convey the intention to not construct a paved pedestrian way or sidewalk. The applicant's laid out his argument as to why he would like relief from that section, discussion and or potential action. Floor is open.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that the planning board waive the pedestrian way or sidewalk requirement as strict conformity, would pose an unnecessary hardship to the applicant, and the waiver would not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulations.
Is there a second for Councilor Boyd's motion?
Second that motion.
Second by Paul McLaughlin. If further discussion? Then let's do a roll call vote. Nelson Disco.
I vote in favor of this motion.
Bill Boyd.
Boyd votes aye.
Paul McLaughlin.
I vote aye.
Bob Best votes aye as well. 4-0-0 to grant the sidewalk waiver. The initially requested waivers regarding utilities have all been withdrawn, and so we've got 3 waivers related to road construction, which we can decide to deal with one at a time or in group, as they're all somewhat related. The waivers are 4.12B, which requires street grades not exceed 8% and a K value of 30. Section 4.12C, which requires a maximum cul-de-sac length of 1,200 feet in length, and 4.12D, which requires a maximum grade on an approach leg of 5%. Any discussion by members of the board? The one thing that I did notice was the village district's requirement to put in a fire hydrant at station 600, which I assume is 600 along the Charles Road extension. Robert Price, is that correct? Where that hydrant will go if the village district's advice is accepted?
Their comments came in late after review was done. I was able to stick them in the memo, so I did not look at that honestly.
Okay. So let me make sure I can identify where station 600 is. Here we go, 600. It's right in the curve of Charles Road in front of 3A Lot 10, or 3A Lot 26. So for background purposes on that, the purpose of this limitation on the length of dead-end roads is to support the fire department in their ability to provide service to remote areas. And a fire hydrant usually supports the granting of a waiver for a lengthy road because it provides a water source that is closer than the end of the road or the main street. With that in mind, as to all of these waivers, we can deal with them as you like, board members. There's a slope, there's a road length, and there's an approach angle waiver.
Excuse me, Bob, but what is the request regarding the hydrant? They want to put one in?
Nope, there's no request regarding a waiver regarding a hydrant. There's a waiver with respect to our limitation of a road length. And road length waivers are usually related to fire department service and how far they would have to go to get water.
Okay.
With a hydrant supporting, constructed along the roadway, that's typically something that the board has taken into account in considering whether to grant one of those waivers. That's the only reason for going into that discussion.
So what are they asking for now with regard to the hydrant? They're asking to
no waiver for the hydrant. They want a roadway that's 1,450 feet long, where we normally limit it to 1,200.
Well, I think the fire department was asking for a second hydrant, correct? We supplied a hydrant at the end of the road for them here.
Okay, and they're asking for one partway down. So there's multiple hydrants down Charles Road then. I got you.
Yeah, because we didn't put one at the 6 at the corner, but you're right. We had done it originally for the length at the end, thinking that's where they wanted it. It works either way.
So the intention would be that there be 2 hydrants, and whether that matters to the board's consideration of the waiver request is up to each individual board member.
Correct.
I'm still confused. I'm sorry. Are we going to add a hydrant? Are they asking us to move the hydrant? Are they asking for another one?
The hydrant, no waivers are requested with respect to the hydrant. The Merrimack Village District has listed in their requested comments, which we would include as a condition of approval, that a hydrant would be put at station 600.
A second one.
Yeah.
Okay. And we've got no problem with that, right?
No problem with it at all.
Okay. All right. I just didn't understand. Thank you.
Sure. I'm sorry if I was confusing with that. Again, it's typically a consideration when we think about maximum road length.
Yeah.
How far will the fire department have to go to get water?
Yeah.
And if there was no water in the area, we might approach a waiver request in one way. Mm-hmm. And if there's water available, we might approach it in another way.
Right.
That's the whole reason for connecting the two.
Gotcha.
With that in mind, what is the will of the board with request to any or all of the remaining roadway design waivers?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that the planning board provide a waiver as it relates to section 4.12.b, 4.12.c, and 4.12.d as specific circumstances relative to the subdivision or conditions of the land in such subdivision indicate that the waiver will properly carry out the spirit and intent of the regulations.
Is there a second for Councilor Boyd's motion? Nelson Disco has his hand up to offer a second. Further discussion? Paul McLaughlin, how do you vote?
Vote aye.
Bill Boyd?
Boyd votes aye.
Nelson Disco?
I vote aye.
Bob Best votes aye as well. 4-0-0 to grant the 3 waivers related to road design. Is there other information that the planning board members would like to discuss? Are there any conditions of approval that we heard tonight that we discussed with the applicant that we would like to add to the ones that the staff outlined for us? Or are the ones that we heard tonight already covered by the staff's comments? Nelson?
Yeah, the one thing that I discovered this week, and I didn't get a happy answer on yet, is this piece of extra green land that went with the original subdivision. It seems to be, yeah, that one there, you got it. I'd like to know the disposition of that. So that's, you know, does it belong to somebody now, or is it part of a common land that all of these people own, which is kind of what it looks like, but may not be.
Sure. My comments on that, nothing that we've heard so far suggests that there's a homeowners association or fractionally owned real estate among the lot owners. If we had, we would have it would have affected quite a lot of the discussions as people discuss things. Whether it was intended to be one in the beginning in the 60s, I certainly can't say. As to this particular proposal, the lot remains in its current state as approved in 1960 whatever or 70 whatever, except for growing a little bit by getting the road teed off next to it. We can certainly take a look and see what a tax map has on it, whether it's a lot of record or not. Provide that feedback. Frankly, I could probably, give me a second, I can look it up while we're here to at least know whether it's a taxed lot of record. Any other discussion while I'm looking that up? Nope. Well, hang on a second. Give me a minute to look. Parcel search, address.
Your tax map's going to show it attached to the lot in the corner up here.
Yeah. So it might have been sold or purchased by that, or given to, or
could be. Let's see here. Yeah, what the tax map shows doesn't necessarily correlate with the registry of deeds, but we can take a look at it. Let's see. Where is the greenway in this picture? The green belt is added onto the lot 3A30, which is on the corner of Charles Road and Bates Road.
It's this lot right here, suppose that's what your tax map shows.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it looks like there's a shed off of that house at 3A30, which would be either on or very close to the greenway.
Yeah.
The green belt, I'm sorry. Green belt. There is no lot of record as a green belt.
Right.
So. Other questions or comments? If there are no other questions or comments, we're finished with the waivers. What's the will of the board with respect to potential final disposition of the application?
Well, they're gonna clean up that business on Squires, right? They're gonna show us the sidewalk through there. We've settled on a 10-foot wide easement through there.
Yeah. Now, what they've discussed, and make sure it's satisfactory to the board, is a 10-foot wide easement, but not necessarily paving it or making it a sidewalk. It's certainly available for pedestrians to use, but it's not paved as they proposed it.
Oh, I thought he was talking about paving it. At least the part that came off of Charles, where the to avoid the steep bank.
Yep, he's going to steer it around the steep bank so it doesn't cover the steep part, but it's not intended, at least as they've described it, to be paved. It seems to be consistent with the use that people are making of it today, that it's considered somewhat in its natural state. So I'm not sure what anyone's view of it would be if it was being proposed to be paved.
Well, I wonder how it's defined. How do people?
I'm sorry, I was under the impression what I was trying to do is allow people a pathway like now where we're springtime and that, but paving a path and then it has to be iced and sanded and somebody slips, that I was not envisioning. I was envisioning a 10-foot wide pedestrian way that'd be similar to what you have in the woods and stuff like that, where people are going to over the next 5-10 years. And like Robert already said, probably already have a path somewhat knocked down from there. And then going around the slope that we talked about. So I envisioned it as more in the woods and the nature and the green, and definitely was not envisioning it paving it and having to salt it or sand it and make sure people aren't hurting themselves out there. So sorry if I misrepresented that, but that's how we intended it.
I just wanted it to be clearly defined some way on the ground so that I'm not looking for pavement either so much as a clear.
I can flag this line or something for you. I have it shown on here as a pedestrian way, 10-foot wide pedestrian easement. I can flag it in the field or something after construction, or, we do those little conservation plaques or something. I could just kind of put one every 50 feet. It'd be about 2 of them.
And then it's got to connect to the one coming off of Elizabeth.
Well, this is all right away, so that's all easily. This is all town right away. So they connect just right here, boom.
Yeah, that Elizabeth part is paved.
Yeah, they'll be paved here and they'll be paved here. It's only this little section between that'll be grass if they don't want to turn around and go back. If they want to turn around and go back the same way, they can just turn around the cul-de-sac.
Yep. And the Squires Road piece has got another 10-foot wide easement, which we talked about before as well. My view of this is 2 things. It seems to be consistent with the use that the neighbors have made of it, that it's a trail in the woods for recreational purposes and intended to stay that way. The other view of it that I have is that this is generally an accommodation that the neighbors have made. I think Bill got logged out. Let's admit him again. An accommodation that the developers have made in order to provide a little goodwill towards the neighbors, but especially the Squires Road piece, a recreational trail that leads to a power line easement for people, I continue to hold as outside our jurisdiction to require of the applicant. If the applicant's chosen to provide it, I think we can certainly accept it and include it in a plan. But I don't believe that it's an appropriate approach to the planning board to give access to an abutting parcel with no indication that the abutting parcel wishes to have pedestrians on it. A pretty good indication that they probably don't. With that in mind, I think that accepting it as an accommodation that the applicant has decided to do in the spirit of goodwill for the benefit of the neighbors is where we should leave it. My 2 cents.
Okay.
Other comments or questions?
I just wanted to show it and be clear about it. You see, if you look at the cul-de-sac at the end of Charles, it looks like it's coming off about 10 o'clock on the right. And when Matt showed us, I thought he had it over on the other side.
Yeah, I think that Matt showed us that wouldn't come off at 10 o'clock after he's done, that he's got to come around a little bit and wrap it around to do the slope.
But what happened is it's 10 o'clock here, and then when, like you said, the plan flips, and it flips, so here it's 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
Sorry. They're both in the same location, it's just that they're flipped.
I got you. Where's the area where you said you had to adjust the route of the pedestrian way for the slopes?
That's up on the other one.
That's on the Hammerhead piece or Squires Road piece?
That's right here. So I want to come up the easement that I showed you there and then come around it up in here. So this is where we're going to bring the utility to map 15 here.
Oh, yeah, okay. I was on the wrong place.
Okay.
I flipped it. It's confusing.
Certainly on a final plan, there should be a line of where you want the pedestrian easement to be.
Well, like I said, I've got it on the plan. I didn't connect it over to here. So there's already this easement right here that goes down like this. This is the utility easement for the access of 15. I didn't realize this was rock. That's all. It's just going to connect right here to this easement and come around the bottom half. So I got to put a little. This was 10 feet. That's 25 feet wide. So I got to put a 15 foot in there.
So long as we have some markings in the field as well that defines it, I guess that is my
okay.
The idea of putting a little trail plaque here and there, I think, is certainly satisfactory, just to remind people 20 years from now that they do have not just a trail through the woods, but a right to a trail through the woods. Let me a little bit of housekeeping. Councilor Boyd, you dropped it out and came back a couple of times. Is there any part of the discussion you missed that you want to make sure we cover so that your participation is not affected?
I apologize for dropping out. I had no idea what was happening. I don't know what I missed, but I don't think, and I say this with respect to the applicant and Mr. Peterson, I don't think what I missed is salient to how I've thought about the project. So. Okay.
Generally, the last few minutes have been a discussion from Nelson about the location of the pedestrian trail, woods trail, okay. And that it marked on the map, marked on the ground, and that it be available for people.
No, I think
but not paved.
I think that's appropriate. I think Matt knows that I had some concerns about wanting to maintain that, and as long as there's consensus that that's appropriate, then I'm on board.
Okay, good. Other discussion by members of the board. What would the board like to do in terms of any potential final disposition of the application? If there's nobody on the board that's willing to make a determination for a final disposition, then what other action would the board like to take?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that the planning board recommend that the planning board approves staff's recommendation that the board grant conditional final approval to the application with the following precedent conditions to be filled within 6 months and prior to the plan signing unless otherwise specified. All of the items that are reflected in the April 16th, 2021 memorandum to Robert Best, Chairman and members of the planning board, from Robert Price, Planning and Zoning Administrator, with the caveat that what has been addressed in this memorandum be redacted and any additional items of concern that have been raised through public testimony tonight be incorporated and be fulfilled by staff and the applicant and Mr. Peterson.
Thank you for the motion, Bill. You mentioned that the staff's memo might be in some way redacted. Is there a particular redaction you're looking for, or do you just mean augmented with the new information from tonight?
Well, waiver number 4, section 4.15.a requires all utilities to be underground.
Ah, yes, I gotcha.
Stuff in there that we covered. So I'm asking the planning board to rely on Mr. Price to basically take a black magic marker and redact the stuff that we covered. That is not
the waivers that are perfect.
Exactly.
Perfect. The waivers that have been requested are not part of the approval.
Correct.
The waivers that have been withdrawn are not part of the approval.
Correct.
Is there a second for Councilor Boyd's motion?
I'll second that.
Nelson Disco offers a second. Further discussion? If there's no further discussion, then Paul McLaughlin, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Bill Boyd?
Boyd votes aye.
Nelson Disco?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. 4-0-0 to grant conditional final approval to the application subject to all the conditions in the staff memo and any additions we made here tonight. Robert, is there anything else we need to do before we move on to the next agenda item?
No, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that. Then item number 4 on our agenda.
Good night, guys. Have a great night.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for the presentation. And thank you to the members of the public for offering their input as well. It was very helpful.
Point of personal privilege.
Yes, please.
Since this is potential, well, it's not potential. This is going to be my last meeting on the planning board, Matt. I just
Yeah.
want to say for the times that I've been on the planning board working with you and everybody at Keach Nordstrom, I just want to say you guys are nothing but professional. You answer all of our questions, and I wish you nothing but the best of success for you personally and for the entire firm for the future. It's been a personal privilege working with you, so thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. It's been the same pleasure back at you. So have a good night, guys.
Have a good week.
Well said, Counselor. Okay, item 4 on agenda is the John Flatley Company as the applicant and Gilbert Crossing LLC and John J. Flatley as the owner. Continued review for consideration of an amendment to a previously approved mixed-use development conditional use permit to permit 96 additional multifamily residential units. The parcels are located at 645, 673, 685, 703, and 707 Daniel Webster Highway and 5 Gilbert Drive in the I-1 Industrial Aquifer Conservation and Wellhead Protection Districts. Tax map 6E, lot 31, 33, 34, 35, 36, and 37. Case Planning Board 2021-12. It is continued from the April 6, 2021 Planning Board meeting. And my notes tell me that we've got a request from the applicant to continue until, when are we aiming for, Robert, for the continuance?
May 4th.
From May 4th. With that in mind, what's the will of the board?
Move approval, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second for the continuance? Motion by Councilor Boyd, second by Paul McLaughlin to grant the applicant's requested continuance. If there's no further discussion, we can vote. Bill Boyd, how do you vote?
Boyd votes aye.
Paul McLaughlin?
I vote aye.
Nelson Disco?
Aye.
I will abstain. 301. The motion carries for the continuance. Item 5 on the agenda is Ronald Rosenfeld as the applicant and Garrett and Jillian Susi and Rosiniero Trust of 2014 as the owner. Review for acceptance and consideration of a final approval for a lot line adjustment. The parcels are located at 12 and 14 Dodier Court in the R1 Residential by Soils District, tax map 7C, lots 47-1 and 47-2. And it is Case Planning Board 2021-13. Robert, is there anything that we need to know before we hear from the applicant?
Yes. So as staff did the review for this application, it noted that 3 variances are required by the opinion of staff because we are dealing with 2 lots that are legal non-conforming as they currently sit. And staff has, as you know, consistently interpreted the zoning ordinance to say that any change to any lot line whatsoever will result in the need for compliance with the ordinance today. So staff is noting that each lot would need a frontage variance and one of the lots would need a minimum lot size variance. Staff's recommending that the application not be accepted tonight and that the board continue both the acceptance and the hearing to June 1st or either June 1st to allow the applicant time to attend the May ZBA meeting to get the variances or to a date uncertain to allow them an indefinite amount of time. Depending on what's better for them, and then we come back after we've been revised.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Bill Boyd.
Can I ask a question of staff, if I could, please?
Please, yes.
Not to get into the mechanics of what happened at community development, but was the applicant encouraged to go to the ZBA first before submitting their plan and package to us, so that I just feel like that they're here prematurely right now. I think it's somewhat unfair to the applicant that they're presenting something we potentially not going to be able to act on it tonight. So I'm just curious to know what happened with the process.
We put the memo out. I spoke to the applicant's counsel on it earlier this week as well, and suggested that they request a continuance to June 1st, and I received no response on that. So I don't know if they wish to speak to that tonight, but I know they do not necessarily agree with our interpretation of the ordinance, but that has consistently been done in the past. So as of right now, this is where we stand.
Okay, fair enough, Robert. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you for the good question. I think that when we reach the point in our agenda for other items of concern, we might consider what feedback the planning board might wish to give to applicants who come before us without the staff's recommendation that the application's complete. And I've certainly experienced in other towns in my professional life that you cannot get to the planning board without without the staff believing that it's complete. So anyway, for the purposes that we're here, the applicant believes his application is complete. The staff disagrees. With that in mind, Robert, is there anything else that we should know before we hear from the applicant?
No, I mean, the only thing I can say is that while the planning board can legally do a condition of approval that the applicant obtain those necessary variances that we're calling out, traditionally we don't like to do that here, to have the planning board see something that is already deemed zoning compliant or has the various complaints before they make action on it. So that's
I concur with the notion that typically when there's variances associated with frontage requirements and lot line locations, because the zoning board's action could potentially alter that in one degree or another, we've been loath to make that a condition of approval, since the plan might change between when we see it the first time when we quote sign it. With that in mind, let's allow the applicant to introduce his project, tell us about it, and see what the board thinks of the idea, whether it's complete or not. Who's here for the applicant?
I am, Mr. Chairman. My name is Mike Plouffe. I'm a land surveyor with Fieldstone Land Consultants. I'm here tonight because when we did first submit the application, as we read the zoning ordinance, we felt that this lot line revision is so minor in nature that we're not affecting anything, no improvements. It's just it's a fee title of 1,057 square foot equal area swap. And as we read the zoning ordinance, we didn't feel that variances needed to be secured. In fact, I hadn't done this at any other town before. And we didn't find out about this until last Thursday, I believe, when we received the staff memo. So I just wanted to answer your question as to why we were going ahead with this. Apparently, we didn't know that the variances were required. And in fact, we still are not very certain that they are. But we do intend to go to the zoning board with this application and try and secure the variances. But the main reason why I'm here tonight is that, you know, we're already here and I didn't know the preference of the board. I was really hoping that I could explain the reason for the lot line revision, and potentially the board would possibly approve conditionally upon receiving the variances from the zoning board. So that's basically why I'm here right now.
Okay. Thank you, Mike, for the explanation. I do want to hear the specifics about the lot line adjustment and what's motivating it and those details.
Okay.
I think when it comes to the determination of variances being required, I wouldn't weigh in on my own interpretation of the regulation in that regard, simply because we're bound by the determination of the planning and zoning administrator. The only relief that's available from that determination is through the zoning board to either appeal their decision or ask for a variance as they've requested and indicated it's necessary. It's simply just not within our authority to overrule or second guess that decision.
I understand.
Tell me more about your lot line adjustment, what you're after.
Sure. Am I allowed to share the screen?
Sure.
I have a
arrange for that. Robert, have you done? There we go. Mike.
Can everyone see this?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So, Mr. Rosenfeld is the owner of 7C47-2, which is this pink outlined lot right here. It's a pre-existing non-conforming lot of record. Mr. Susi is the owner of the blue lot 7C47-1, which is right here as well. If we zoom in on the detail, you'll see parcel A is the yellow area. There's some encroachment on Mr. Rosenfeld's lot onto Mr. Soucy's lot with fencing, and it's fairly close. There's a stockade fence with a concrete patio area. So, and there's also a generator here. You can see this dashed line right there. That is the existing lot line as it exists today. And it keeps going straight right up through here and goes back onto the existing line. So basically what we were proposing was parcel A and parcel B, whereas parcel A would be conveyed from Mr. Soucy to Mr. Rosenfeld to clear up this encroachment. And parcel B would be conveyed to Mr. Soucy from Mr. Rosenfeld, which is the green area. And they're both equal area swaps of 1,057 square feet. So it's a pretty innocuous lot line revision, just trying to fix a problem that exists right now. I mean, what more can I say about it? It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it is. Thank you for explaining it, and thank you for color coding it. It really helps us understand it. Also, my applause and pat on the back to the two neighbors for coming up with a solution to an innocent kind of problem that people occasionally run into, and rather than duking it out, they figured out a solution. Kudos to them for doing it. Definitely deserve that. Simple enough to understand. What is it about these lots that is, as they exist today, is non-conforming?
So lot 47-1, which is the blue lot right here, has frontage of 241.33 feet of frontage right along here. It's required today to have 250. So we're short by about a little under 9 feet. That lot also is at 2.012 acres, whereas today it's required to have 100,000 square feet instead of the 87,628. And the other variance would be for the lot frontage along Mr. Rosenfeld's lot, the pink lot. Presently, he has 200 feet of length along the right-of-way, and he's required to have 250 feet by today's zoning ordinance.
So these lots were compliant when Dotier Court was originally laid out, but they're no longer compliant because our regulations have changed?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation. I don't have any other questions. Do any other members of the board have questions?
Mr. Chairman, I'll just chime in. At one time, we didn't always, as a planning board chair, we did not always require going to the ZBA first. And we learned that that was not a good way to go. And we sort of established a policy that if there was a variance required, it should go there first, mainly because of influencing. It was as if the planning board was putting the Board of Adjustment into a sort of a pickle, because if the planning board approved the design already, then they felt their authority was diminished by that pre-approval. And so we established this policy that it shall go to the ZBA first. And that's always been the case. In this particular case, I don't have a problem with deviating from that. If the board feels they're comfortable with this, I don't see the ZBA doing anything else. I don't think we're diminishing their authority in this case, but that's a little background on this and why we do it the way we do it. Just FYI.
Thank you for that explanation and that history. I agree with you that that's been the practice fairly consistently, although we have as a board occasionally deviated from it if we felt that the conditions warranted it. Whether that's the case tonight, I leave up to the board to consider, debate, and and hear feedback. The staff's recommendation is certainly laid out in its memo that the staff recommends we determine the application isn't complete without the results of those variances. With that in mind,
Not to say, if I could, Mr. Chair, not to say that it's incomplete, but not accepted as complete and kind of punt that decision. Because if you determine it's not complete, that could cover a whole set of other issues.
okay. Do members of the board have other questions with this?
Ironically, I had a title today in Wilmington, which did a land swap of 1,645 feet specifically for not in this case of an encroachment issue, but for setback requirements. So, and it was all pretty straightforward. You could see it, and going back to the late 90s down in Massachusetts. So, being the son of a surveyor, what Mr. Plouffe has done, it's pretty straightforward. So I'm inclined to agree with what Nelson is saying. I don't think we're boxing the ZBA into anything. This is just what I would call an administrative correction to accomplish a task and keep two neighbors harmonious with each other, which I think is great. To echo your point, Mr. Chairman. So
thank you, Councilor Boyd. As I looked at the map, I noticed this earlier today, but didn't comment on it until just now. Does lot 7C47-1 encroach onto 7C54?
There does seem to be a small encroachment with the gravel area right here and a little bit of the paved area. However, I guess that would be the next application if they were to resolve that. But it's not part of this application.
Okay. Our approach to that generally in the past has been to make sure that there's a plan on the note to indicate that the planning board's approval does not constitute approval of any encroachments that may be on the plan that are pre-existing. And so its normal approach is just put a note to say that exists. We're looking at something else. Our approval doesn't touch that.
Okay.
But the board's got to have a comfort level with doing that too, and not sort of telling you to resolve that too while you're here. Further discussion by members of the board. Where's the driveway location?
The driveway location, they come together right here, and it does come outside a little bit and then back into the easement right here.
So the existing driveway location isn't in the easement of record?
Not entirely, no.
Okay. That should be something that's attended to and fixed as a part of this proposal as well. That the easement area is adjusted or relocated to show that the driveway is that it now encompasses the driveway. Move the easement, not the driveway. If you follow what I'm saying.
Right, and we have council involved with this as we've been going forward here. So that's certainly something that we can address.
Okay, and then the driveway location should show on the plan the whole way.
Yeah.
What'd you say, Nelson?
I said yes. I agree.
Yeah. Okay, so the driveway location goes a little east of the easement area and then returns back to where it was.
Correct.
How did that come to happen that way?
I really don't know. Maybe when it was constructed, they didn't quite know where the lot line was, and that's where they constructed the drive. But,
was the home on 47-2 built before the one on 47-1?
I'd have to check the cards on that. I don't know off the top of my head.
Might have been that they built their own driveway on their own property and then later just attached somebody else to it.
Exactly.
Okay. Other comments and questions? Okay. We have not accepted the application. The board can take up that question if it chooses to. The staff's recommendation is that we continue that determination until the variance situation is resolved. And I would now add to that list of things to resolve the easement and driveway location be potentially resolved before it comes back before us, if that's where the board wants to go with it. The other option is to determine that it's complete and make those kinds of things conditions of approval. What's the will of the board?
Nelson, what's your feeling?
Well, I want to ask a question on that because the second easement request here has kind of clouded the water a little bit. what Bob is saying, what I think Bob just said, was that he wants them to come back with a resolution to this driveway issue. Is that, did I understand that right, Bob? You want the...
Yeah, that should be resolved as a part of our approval one way or another, whether that's a condition of approval or that's something that's resolved before they come back. If we're deciding that they should come back, then that's obviously something I'd want to see on that revised plan at that point, is a description of the easement location essentially being relocated from where it is to where it ought to be, so that the driveway that's shared by the two properties is entirely within an easement.
Well, Mr. Chair, if I may, I think that would be reasonable to have as a condition of approval when that time comes.
Okay.
It would be reasonable to have, you're saying it would be reasonable to have this other easement shown or described. Well, what is meant by that little stripedy stuff? I don't see a code breaker on the edge of this.
That's labeled right. It's a 20-foot wide drainage easement. That's what this one is right here.
And the other one is labeled right where your hand is. That's common drive easement per reference plan, something other.
Right.
Okay, now where's the boundaries of the common driveway easement? That's
the western boundary is up here.
Yeah.
And the eastern boundary is right there.
Yeah.
And it'd be pretty simple. We just didn't locate everything all the way down to the road. I mean, we're concentrating in this area here. We can certainly show that drive going here, and certainly show the revised easement on the final plan.
Yeah. Now that's, although we're calling it an easement, there's actually two easements. The pink lot has an easement in favor of the blue one, and the blue one's got an easement in favor of the pink one. If the driveway is not located in the blue easement at all, frankly, for my purposes, it could go away, unless the applicants have some reason for it to exist. If the driveway is completely located on the pink lot, then the pink lot should have an easement to benefit the blue lot, if that makes sense.
Okay. In that case, I would recommend that we send it back to the ZBA next and let them straighten it all out at once. We don't know exactly what they want to do. I don't think this surveyor knows either.
Other comments or questions? And if not, is someone willing to make a motion?
So, planning board, Bob, through you to Robert. Zoning board, is this going to be before the zoning board next week, or are we looking at the month of May that they'd be going to the ZBA?
Correct. The submittal deadline for the April meeting was passed, so they would need to get on the May 26th ZBA agenda.
So then the planning board would be looking at having it on the first Tuesday in June, potentially.
That would be June 1st. That's what I would say if you want to go to a date certain. Yes.
So since they've got to go to the May 26th ZBA no matter what, bringing it back to us would be 5-6 days later.
Yes.
And then they'd clear all their hurdles. Or if we voted to approve it tonight, they'd be 5 or 6 days ahead when they got their relief in May 26th, assuming the ZBA didn't screw around with their property lines at all.
So go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, Robert. Go ahead.
We basically would be doing the review in anticipation, I guess, if you will. Maybe the review of the plan would be done probably towards the latter half of that week quickly. But we could still do it after the decision. We'd still have to notice it ahead of time, or the legal notice would be issued and be posted to the agenda. We operate under the assumption, I guess, at that point, since the time frame is so close, that the ZBA would grant the variances, as it seems to be a routine type of situation here. As you know, when anything happens, and if something does muck that up, then we would do another continuance or deal with it as it needs to be dealt with. Otherwise, if everything does end up going smoothly, then it would be ready to go in the first.
So the variances they would be seeking would be to have less lot frontage on Doty or Court because the regulations have changed since the time of their original subdivision, and those compliance or obtaining variances are necessary in order for the planning board to entertain the lot line adjustment that's between the two homes and the correction of the easement.
Yeah.
Okay. Up to you, board. Do you want to find it complete and just to make determinations tonight, or the staff's recommendation is that we continue it to after the ZBA meeting, which we could frankly put on our June 2nd calendar if we chose to do that?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we consider the plan complete as there's enough information on the plan to invoke the board's jurisdiction to make an informed decision.
Is there a second for Bill's motion? I'll second it for the purposes of discussion. Does anyone want to discuss the idea of it being complete or not complete? Nelson, you have a hand up.
Yeah, I was going to go the other way with this. Let's send it back to the ZBA. Let them do what they have to do to it. Get the driveway shown on the plan and come back with one plan that cleans it all up. That's what I would prefer to do. That would be my recommendation.
I agree with Nelson. If we were just dealing with that one single property line issue, then I would have no problem with finding it complete and voting on it tonight. But to complicate it, and we're just going to be, 6 days after the ZBA, send to them, figure it out, and then bring it back to us.
Okay. So there's a motion seconded to determine it's complete. Everybody that's wanted to speak to it has spoken to it. Paul McLaughlin, how do you vote on whether the application's complete?
I vote nay.
Bill Boyd?
Boyd votes aye.
Nelson Disco?
No, voting nay.
Doesn't matter which way I vote, says it'll either tie and fail or fail and fail. So I'll vote yes, make it 2-2, and motion fails. Is there an alternative motion the board would like to make?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we continue this application to June 8th.
June 8th.
Second that motion.
Second. Is that our first meeting, or is it June 1st?
First.
June 1 is our first meeting in June.
The dates are June 1st or June 15th.
Okay. So the June dates are June 1 or June 15.
Okay, sorry, I'm in town council mode. I apologize. To June 1st.
And that was, Paul, you seconded that?
Yeah, I remain seconded.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay. Paul McLaughlin, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Bill Boyd?
Boyd votes aye.
Nelson Disco?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. 4-0-0 to continue to June 1 to allow the applicant to obtain the variances that are applied for and appear before the ZBA to seek the variances that it would need and to correct the driveway easement situation. Thank you for that. Robert, is there anything else that we need to touch on before we move on to the next agenda item?
No, it's good.
Mr. Plouffe, Mr. Rosenfeld, thank you. Should be easy steps for you folks.
Okay.
Thank you for considering it.
No,
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We are up to item 6, which is discussion and possible action regarding other items of concern. There is a bullet point on my agenda indicating that Synergy Self-Storage and 401 DW Highway apartment conversion is looking for an extension of their conditions of approval. Robert, is there anything that we should know about that item?
Just want to make clear, since I know we've seen Synergy a few times, they are essentially at the point of being done. All I need is a couple of waivers noted on the final plan, and that will be done. And in terms of the 401 project, they also they're down to their final item, which they are working out with Public Works right now. And assuming this stuff gets sorted out, I could feasibly have plans as early as tomorrow.
Okay. So these are two separate extensions, Synergy Self-Storage and the 401 DW Highway apartment conversion. Or the 401 is Chris's building in the front and Synergy is the back lot. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. Typically, they're relatively freely granted by the board. What's the will of the board with respect to, Robert, should we go 3 months, 6 months?
Standard 6 months is what you've done. And I'm comfortable with whatever time we can do, because they're at the end of the process. Remember, once in a life.
Okay. Potential 6 month extension of Deadline to meet conditions of approval. What's the will of the board?
So moved, Mr. Chairman, per the recommendations of Mr. Price.
Second. Second by Nelson Disco. Let's do a roll call vote. Paul?
Vote aye on the motion.
Bill Boyd?
Boyd votes aye.
Nelson Disco?
I vote aye.
I vote aye as well. 400 to provide those extensions. Next item under discussion, possible action regarding other items of concern is some ambition or intention coming from the higher ups around our town hall that we ought to start meeting in person, or at least make a plan to start meeting in person or have a discussion about it. If we did start meeting in person, we could do that at our next meeting or the meeting after that. I don't know what everybody's status is on vaccinations or whether anybody intends to. We would meet in our usual town hall meeting space, and to the extent we had a busy night with a full agenda, we would have capacity limits on the number of people that could be in the room, and we'd have to deal with those logistics. We'd also have to socially distance around the meeting table, which seems really easy to do with the dwindling number of members that we have here on the board.
Don't use the word dwindling, please.
Yeah, okay, that's a bad choice.
Thank you.
What do you guys think of the idea of meeting in person again and returning to those? Bill?
Town council's been doing it now for months with minimal impact to staff, minimal impact to people coming before the council to speak on issues or to present. I certainly would respect this board's wishes if there were concerns with any of the members that may have vaccination issues or comorbidity issues as it relates to moving back into town hall, moving back into the Matthew Thornton meeting room. But all that being said, you know, the council's been meeting there now for coming up on 7 months, and but for the grace of God, we've been very lucky in that regard. So I would encourage this board to really consider getting back to being in public again. I think it would send a good message to the community that you know, we're back in home. We're no longer remote. We're back in our home. So that's my 2 cents.
I, for one, I'm not so much worried about the board. As Bob states, it's very easy to social distance, and the town council has not had any issues. But with some of the projects coming before us, with various properties and apartments, we have a decent amount of people that are going to want to attend or offer testimony. I don't know how easy it's going to be to move that many people around in that room if we're going to have a lot of people, but I don't know if those other boards have to deal with that sort of situation.
So one of the things that we did, Paul, as a possible process for contingency is opening up the old selectmen's room or the Merrimack Memorial Room, socially distancing in there, providing video conferencing inside there so that even though you weren't in the main room, they could be in this room and still be able to participate. And obviously it would be at the chairman's prerogative to allow ample time for any folks that are in there moving to the other part of town hall to provide testimony if they wanted to. I mean, we're pretty much doing that right now with the delay as it relates to people dialing in and that kind of thing. So I think, you know, our viewers at home who watch the planning board on a consistent basis are pretty much in tune that there's some additional steps in waiting to get if there are people waiting to participate. They're anticipating those particular delays and accommodating those people. So, I mean, it's a valid point. I don't disagree with you, especially with the project, the north end of town and the soon, which I'm anticipating there's going to be a project presented to this board within the next couple of months as it relates to Industrial and Continental Boulevard. So I certainly can appreciate your concerns, but I think if the chairman's willing to work with Tim and with Paul McCallie, soon to be new town manager, I'm sure you could probably make an accommodation work. So,
thank you.
Sorry to be long-winded about it.
No, I think that's a good comment. Under COVID restrictions, does anyone know what the capacity of the Matthew Thornton room is with social distancing?
That's a good question.
room size is one of those things that's ultimately managed no matter what the circumstances are. There could be a hot school board meeting where they've got to shuffle, and I've heard people talking about going to Manchester school board meetings and having to wait in the stairway till their turn came, and people are shuffled around. And obviously those weren't COVID times. But there could always be a situation with room capacity where people are required to shuffle, and we would manage the logistics of that at the board level and move people around and make sure that we were patient and gave everybody a chance to speak. It's just going to be a lower capacity, whatever it is, and it's probably, in addition to board members, I would imagine you could socially distance 20, 25 people in that room. And the applicant will probably consist of 4 or 5 of those, which would allow potentially up to 20. I'm guessing at the number, I could be wrong. Paul or Nelson, both of you I think had some wish to speak further on this. Nelson.
Yeah, I was just going to speak to it a little bit. First, I had a question. Are we talking with or without masks? Because I think that may make a difference to some people. For my own part, I'm vaccinated, and I'm okay with going back to that room. So I have no problem working in that room. And under those circumstances, I would suggest maybe we start requiring masks and then ease off after a month or so. But I don't know if the council wears masks or not, or do they?
So what we do is, I wear my mask when I go into chambers, and when we're seated 6 feet apart. At that particular point, I generally like to take off my mask because I like to be heard into the microphone. I know Councilor Albert would wear his mask. I also know that Councilor Woods would wear his mask. And from time to time, Councilor Harrington would wear her mask. So I really think it's a matter of personal preference, to be honest with you, Nelson.
Yeah, okay. I just didn't know what the protocol was.
The protocol matters for a couple of reasons. Statewide, there's no mask mandate any further that's been rescinded. And so following CDC guidance would be that when you're within 6 feet of somebody, you would wear a mask. If you're not within 6 feet, then it's not necessary. The other potential layer is whether there was any local decision by our town council or whatever to provide a particular requirement. It sounds like there hasn't been one of those. And so you would rely on that CDC guidance. People could always wear masks no matter what if they chose to. And the CDC guidance says when you're unable to social distance, you would wear a mask. Sounds like that would be the approach to it. My personal choice, I'd probably wear mine unless I was speaking into a microphone. I find that if I have to conduct a meeting, I really get short of breath when I wear one of those things. So it just really struggles, and I'm huffing and puffing in the microphone and all that.
Yeah.
Paul, you had a potential discussion or comment. One other thing with respect to the mask requirement, the ability to hold remote meetings is subject to the governor's executive order and emergency orders that we talk about at the beginning of every meeting. We read that script. I certainly haven't heard any news one way or the other, but at any time the governor could decide that the period of requiring those orders is over. And at that time, whether you had planned on it or not, your very next meeting will be in public. Since we are in some way approaching that, it may make sense to ease ourselves into the water ourselves rather than wait until we get shoved off the dock.
Okay.
Yeah. If we have the ability to move the people around, I have no issue with moving back to the room. I just received my second dose today, so we should be fine, I would say.
I had first dose last night, but I'm still comfortable going into the room as it is.
Yeah.
Other comments or questions? Okay, so with that in mind, would we like to do one more remote meeting and aim for our first June meeting in person? Do we want to go in person at our next meeting? What do you guys think?
Why don't we do one more? And by that time, we'll probably have better guidance on the issues you've raised as questions. I would suggest we wait till May. Yeah.
Yep. Tonight is our second April meeting, so our next meeting is the first one in May. The second one in May is what, the 16th?
18th.
May 18th. So we would aim to meet in person beginning at our May 18th meeting.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to everybody?
That makes sense.
Robert, does the staff have any comments or questions or steering guidance on these things?
Nope, we just wanted the board to discuss and be taking notes.
Sounds good. I think it's the right thing to do to get back in person for all the reasons that I think everybody has in mind. However, I think that our ability to use technology and share screens and look at a plan is very useful. And I hope some element of that is retained going forward. Obviously, we all have our paper maps too, but I think it is helpful to have a screen share and somebody pointing their pointer on the thing and, you know, switch into the photographs and then back to the thing. Hopefully we're able to retain some of that. I don't know whether the governor's eventual decision on executive orders will allow people to continue in the future participating by Zoom when it's snowing or someone's ill or something like that. There, I think, has been for a while an ability to telephonically participate in meetings under certain circumstances. I don't know that we've used it much, at least at the planning board level.
Zoom is much better.
Yeah, better than a telephone, at least for me, for my benefit. Okay. I have one other item of concern to discuss. I saved it for the end of our meeting. Obviously, we talked about Alistair at the beginning of our meeting. He was our co-chair, and we need to, our vice chair, and we need to have a vice chair because plans require 2 signatures, and sometimes I've got to recuse myself when someone's got to be able to run a meeting for us and be prepared to do that. With that in mind, it's up to us to look among ourselves to decide who's interested, who's willing. With that in mind, I'll open up the floor to discussion.
So, Mr. Chairman, I really honestly wish that Neil and Lynn were here to participate. And to be perfectly candid with you, Nelson, you're still an alternate. I think it would be very unfair to ask of you to consider being vice chair. I think Paul's been consistent.
Well,
what were you going to say, Nelson?
Yeah, I was going to say I would be willing to do this on a temporary basis, but I wonder if an alternate can be the
vice chair.
Vice chair. Now we can maybe get that changed. If we get an emergency request into the council, there's certainly room on the board to add me back in as a real member, and that might solve that problem. And
one other aspect to consider with this is that we do our normal organizational meeting in a month or 2 in June. So we're looking to essentially complete the term for the next 6 or 8 weeks. And that's probably about how long it takes to go through the council and figure out appointments and that sort of thing. But I know that I'd spoken to Paul to find out if he was interested and willing, and he would be willing and interested in doing that, being the vice chair. If that's the will of the board, I mean, it's up to you guys to decide.
I'd be okay with that.
Okay. Like I said, I wish Neil and Lynn were here to participate, but hopefully within the next 8 weeks, when you do your full reorganization, there'll be a full vetting of people that may want to serve. So with that being said, I would like to nominate Paul McLaughlin to be vice chairman of the planning board if he's willing to accept said nomination.
Well, you want to talk to him first before?
Well, let's see. Let's take a second, then we'll allow Paul to say his piece, whether he's willing to accept the nomination. But is there a second?
Nominations usually don't take a second, to be honest.
All right. Fair enough. Paul, would you accept that nomination?
I would, yeah. Whatever the board needs. I've been on it for a while, so whatever the board needs, I'm here to help.
Yep. Thank you for your willingness to do that. And as I mentioned, Paul and I had chatted a little earlier about what's involved, and we're going to, obviously, depending on how this vote goes, continue to share all that information about what's involved with running a meeting and being the vice chair and all the things that Alistair was doing kind of behind the scenes after I don't know how many years on the board with the experience that brought him. But thank you, Paul, for that.
And Paul, just keep in mind when you're running a meeting, you have to be Switzerland.
I'm very aware of that. Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's just the best advice I can give you. You have to be Switzerland. So.
Yeah, to some extent you do. I mean, you certainly can ask the questions that you're interested in, but you always sort of approach it with as even a hand as you can. With that in mind, Paul's been nominated to be our vice chair for the completion of the term until our organizational meeting. We should do a roll call vote. Bill Boyd, how do you vote?
Boyd votes aye.
Nelson Disco, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Paul McLaughlin, how do you vote?
Abstain.
Bob Best votes aye. So 3-0-1. Congratulations, Paul, and thank you for your service. I really do appreciate it, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
I don't have any other items of discussion or concern. Do any of you have any? And Robert, have I forgotten any that I'm supposed to remember?
Other business-wise, no, we've touched on everything that we needed to know.
Okay. Does anyone else have any discussion items? Okay, then we are up to the approval of the minutes of, where were we here?
Don't have the minutes to approve.
Yes.
If I may, you guys may have noticed that they are not in your packet. We had some staff shortages, and Rhonda was volunteering with elections, and she ended up being out ill the day last week, so they did not get finished in time to make it in the packet. We'll have them for the next time.
Okay, so let's not vote on any minutes. If we can't look at them, I probably shouldn't vote on them, huh? So we will defer item number 7 to consider those minutes at a future meeting, along with whatever other minutes come along with them. That brings us to item 8 on our agenda, which is to adjourn. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second? All right.
Can I take the motion, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please do.
Paul, Robert, Nelson, and Bob, it's been an honor serving with you folks. Robert, you do a great job. Keep up the good work for the town. You are an invaluable asset to what we're doing here in Merrimack. You're a key component. Otherwise, Tim wouldn't have hired you. And I mean that. You've got you and Casey got great roles supporting Tim. Lots of good things are happening here in Merrimack, and I want you to be a part of our success. So thank you so much for what you do day in and day out with everything, the residential pieces, the commercial pieces, the industrial pieces. Really, thank you so much for what you do. But for Bob, Paul, Nelson, and I got nothing but love for you guys. Having served, no disrespect to you, Paul, but I've served with Nelson and Bob a very long period of time, and I've gotten to know these gentlemen really well. And thank you for sending me to Concord. Thank you. I mean that sincerely, and I'm going to miss working with all three of you, but especially you, Bob and Nelson. You two have been invaluable in teaching me and mentoring me throughout the years on a variety of different things, not just planning issues, but leadership skills in planning skills, and articulating key points to people and simplifying things. So I'm very grateful to both of you for that. So thank you so much. I wish you guys the best of success in our growth here in Merrimack. And trust me, I know it's not like I'm going away. I know our paths will cross, but every other Tuesday night, I'm going to miss this. Really am. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for the kind words, and we'll certainly be glad to send you to Concord. We'll miss you here on the planning board. To the extent that being a friend has meant giving a little bit of advice, I just thought of it as friend to friend, not necessarily mentor to anything else. But if it was helpful to you, I'm certainly grateful to have offered whatever words were requested or beneficial. And I'm really proud of the success that you've had as a town councilor. And I look forward to your successes in Concord and many, many other big things. And you're right, our paths are going to continue to cross. Sooner or later, we'll all serve and work together again. Does anyone else have any comments or questions before we vote on our motion to adjourn?
I want to thank Bill for his service on the planning board. He's been an asset to this board from the get-go, and it's been a pleasure working with him and serving with him. And I'm glad that he's going on to higher things and bigger things in Concord. I'm sure he'll do the town proud. And thank you, Bill, for all the time you've put in and the hard work you've done in the background to keep the ball rolling and keep the wheels turning. So thank you.
Thank you, Nelson. Thank you, Bob. We do good work.
We'll be missed.
Thank you, Bill. Bill, I know that you forwarded an email with some questions from a constituent. We'll address those at future meetings and make sure that we're attending to those. I didn't mean to overlook them, but it is getting a little late at night, and I think we're the only ones watching what we're doing right at the moment. So we can answer those questions when there's a better audience.
Move for question, Mr. Chairman.
There we go. Bill Boyd, how do you vote?
Boyd votes aye.
McLaughlin.
I vote aye.
Nelson Disco.
Aye.
Bob Best votes aye as well. 400. Thank you all for the work. And Bill, lunchtime in Concord next week or something.
That sounds good. Barley House, I'm presuming, correct?
Yeah.
Merrimack TV is committed to our community. From gavel-to-gavel coverage of town and school board meetings to updates on town services and projects, we aim to keep you connected.
Good morning. I'm Kyle Fox, Public Works Director for the town of Merrimack.
Hi, I'm Diane Trippett. I'm the town clerk tax collector for the town of Merrimack.
I'm Captain Matt Tarleton with the Merrimack, New Hampshire Police Department.
And keep the public informed of every motion.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
And many moments, so you can be confident that we're here for you. Thanks for watching. Stay connected. Follow Merrimack TV on Facebook.